Chapter 357. Ling Han soon found the inn where Lu Yutong and the others were. Coincidentally, Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan were coming down with Hun Yo, looking like they were going to eat something. It was almost noon, so they could have lunch. Wow, two beauties. Yu Kai-yu immediately whistled. Ling Han rolled his eyes, and said, "Their faces are covered with a white veil, and you know they're beauties? Hee, trust my judgment. If I say they're beauties, they're definitely beauties." Yu Kai-yu patted Ling Han's shoulder, and said with a smile, "Wait here, let brother Yu show you how to pick up girls." Ling Han's expression was strange, and he said, "You're going to pick up the two of them? One is not too little, two is not too much. You should learn, Sai, you're so dark, and though you're not ugly, you're far from handsome. You won't be able to learn brother Yu's skills." Yu Kai-yu shook his head. Ling Han laughed, and said, "Aren't you afraid of hurting my fragile heart by saying that? As a person, the most important thing is to face reality. You indeed don't look that good, and you're far from the handsome brother Yu. Forget it, I won't talk to you about brother Yu's ability to pick up girls." Yu Kai-yu strode towards Lu Yutong and the others. But after a short while, he returned dejectedly, looking dispirited. "What, ran into a rebuff?" Ling Han glanced over, and saw that Hun Yo was still baring her fangs and brandishing her claws at Yu Kai-yu, but when she caught his gaze, the little girl couldn't help but tilt her neck, and look left and right at him. This girl's intuition was a bit frightening. Even Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan had not noticed the slightest bit of abnormality after he had changed his appearance, but Hun Yo seemed to have discovered that there was something different about him, though she had not confirmed it yet. "Don't mention it, let's drink, and we won't go home until we're drunk." Yu Kai-yu looked like he had fallen in love. Ling Han smiled and said, "Do you want me to show you what it means to pick up girls?" "Ha, ha." Yu Kai-yu naturally didn't believe him. He gave him a fake smile and said, "If you can sit with them, then I'm convinced. What's so difficult about that?" Ling Han patted him on the shoulder and said, "Go find a seat first. I'll bring them over later." Yu burst into laughter and said, "Junior apprentice brother Han, Junior apprentice brother Han, I really admire your battle prowess, but your ability to brag seems to be even more awesome. Alright, if you can bring them over, I'll call you big brother in the future." "That's what you said. Don't regret it." Ling Han shook his head. "I said so. You can go now." Yu Kai-yu looked like he was not going to see her off. Without another word, Ling Han walked over to the table where Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan were sitting. Yu Kai-yu, on the other hand, found an empty table and sat down. Naturally, a waiter came over to ask him what he wanted to order. How big could the inn's restaurant be? In just a few steps, Ling Han arrived in front of Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan's table. "Ladies, can I sit down?" Ling Han said with a smile. Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan both revealed displeased expressions. Even though their faces were covered with white veils, it was still possible to see that their willowy eyebrows were furrowed. It wasn't that they hadn't seen lechers before, but it was the first time they had seen someone so daring as to directly ask to sit with them. "No," Li Si-chan said coldly. Meanwhile, Lu Yutong directly extended a slender finger and pointed in the direction of the main entrance, which obviously meant, "Get lost." Yu Kai-yu laughed loudly. He'd hit a snag, so he obviously didn't believe that Ling Han, this dark-skinned and unattractive guy, would succeed. Otherwise, wouldn't it mean that his charm was too bad, even inferior to Ling Han's? Ling Han wasn't discouraged, and said to Hun Yo, "Little beauty, can I sit next to you?" Hun Yo didn't say another word, and directly shifted her butt, making space on the long bench that was originally occupied by one person. Pooh! This time, it was Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan's turn to spurt out. They originally thought that Hun Yo would ignore them even if she didn't explode, and they were even prepared to hold Hun Yo back to prevent the little girl from hurting anyone. But they never imagined that the little girl would actually have this kind of reaction. Was Hun Yo bewitched? Under the two girls' dumbfounded gazes, Ling Han sat down. he knew that Hunyo had already recognized him. He laughed mischievously, and started to tease Hunyo. The little girl was also very cooperative, and soon squeezed into his arms, acting coquettishly. Pa, the chopsticks in Yukayu's hand involuntarily fell onto the table, and his face twitched. Fuck, after all the planning, he'd missed a little girl. Great beauties certainly wouldn't like Ling Han, this dark-skinned and unattractive type, but little girls wouldn't know what a handsome guy was. He'd never thought that junior brother Han would be so popular with children. Thankfully, he only sat at the same table as the two great beauties, and couldn't possibly bring them over. There was no need to call Ling Han big brother. He almost failed miserably in an easy task. Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan were very surprised. Hunyo was extremely repulsed by strangers, and if it weren't for her relationship with Ling Han, even they wouldn't be able to get close to this little girl. But why would an unfamiliar man make Hunyo so defenseless, acting so coquettishly and passionately, as if the other party was Ling Han? Could it be? The two girls' beautiful eyes lit up. They both knew that Ling Han disguised himself and went to the Winter Moon sect. Then this young man in front of them, Ling Han is bad, leaving for so long and not playing with Nyo. At this moment, they heard Hunyo bite Ling Han's hand, and said very discontentedly. As expected. The two girls finally came to a realization and secretly felt ashamed. They were extremely in love with Ling Han, but their sweetheart was right in front of them, yet they didn't recognize him. On the other hand, Hunyo recognized him at a glance. How could they endure this? Ling Han smiled faintly, rubbed Hunyo's hair, and said, "Okay, I'll play with Nyo more in the future." Hunyo knew how to act coquettishly, but definitely wouldn't act unreasonable. She immediately cracked a smile and gave Ling Han a sweet smile. Fuck, could this girl be a vixen in disguise? She was too cunning. In that case, Ling Han would definitely feel apologetic, and he'd have to pamper this girl even more in the future. The two girls looked at each other, both on guard. They definitely couldn't be careless because Hunyo was young, because the little girl would soon become a big girl. With Hunyo's jealousy, at that time, the two of them probably wouldn't even be able to get within 10 meters of Ling Han. Ling Han nodded at the two girls, and said, "I'm called Han Lin now. The guy over there is my cousin, but he doesn't know my identity. You two, follow me." Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan were instantly extremely shy, but they both stood up and followed Ling Han towards Yukayu. Pa, the chopsticks that Yukayu had just picked up not long ago fell onto the table again. His face twisted, and his eyeballs almost popped out. How was this possible? They were really tricked by this guy. This junior brother Han didn't have any outstanding features on his left or right. Could it be that women nowadays like this kind of dark and ordinary type? Chapter 358. Ling Han sat down, holding Hunyo in his arms. The little girl acted coquettishly, clinging to him and refusing to come down at all. Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan sat on either side of him, and the four of them happened to occupy the four corners of the table. "Senior brother, come on, you'll have to change the way you address me in the future," Ling Han said with a smile. Yukayu was driven mad. He turned to Li Si-chan and said, "Did this guy promise you some benefits to have you two sit here? I'm telling you, this guy is a swindler, poor and ugly." In order to protect his senior brother's face, he could not care less, and began to insult Ling Han. Li Si-chan took off her veil, and instantly, her exquisite features were revealed. She was like a fairy, pleasing to the eye. She smiled faintly, and said, "I've disappointed senior brother but I did it willingly." Lu Yutong was not to be outdone, and similarly took off her veil, and said, "Me too." They wore veils because they did not want to attract trouble because of their beauty, but now that Ling Han had returned, they naturally had nothing to fear. Yukayu's mouth involuntarily gaped. He had already expected that the two girls were great beauties, but he had not thought that they would be beautiful to such an extent, completely not inferior to Aoz Tai. Thankfully, he was not someone who could not move his feet when he saw a beauty, and quickly came back to his senses. He gave a thumbs up to Ling Han, and said, You're awesome, I'm convinced. Hee, don't tease senior brother you, Lu Yutong said to Ling Han. Yu Kaiyu was dazed, and immediately came to a realization, and said, so they are your friends. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, senior brother you is finally smart for once. Fuck, I was wondering how your charm could be so great, being able to win over two great beauties at first sight. So you already knew each other. Yu Kaiyu shook his head repeatedly, but also breathed a sigh of relief. It was not that his charm was inferior to Ling Han's, but there was another reason. Moreover, since they already knew each other, the bet just now naturally didn't count. Ling Han was only joking with Yu Kaiyu. He said to Lu Yutong, Brother Guang, Can Yi, and Wu Jiu. Wu Jiu and Can Yi ate first, but Brother Guang. Li Si-chan paused for a moment. He seemed to have suffered some kind of blow, and has been listless for a few days now. Ling Han nodded and said, I'll go later. But first, I have to get senior brother you drunk. Why did you get me drunk? Yu Kaiyu asked innocently. Isn't it worth getting drunk to be able to see two beauties? Ling Han laughed. Hee, then let's drink until we're drunk. Yu Kaiyu was a forthright person. 9 out of 10 people who were forthright were greedy, so he immediately slammed the table and said, Waiter, bring some good wine. However, his forthrightness didn't last long. With Ling Han and the other two taking turns to pour wine on him, he very quickly became drunk. His head swayed, and he couldn't even tell how many people there were in Ling Han and the others. Ling Han got a room and helped Yu Kaiyu inside. He wanted to continue investigating his mother's whereabouts. My auntie is locked in the Blackwater prison. Yu Kaiyu couldn't keep secrets when he was drunk. He said it as soon as he asked, causing Ling Han to shake his head. In the future, he either had to hide important things from him, or he couldn't let him drink. Otherwise, it was as if this guy's mouth didn't have a mouth, and he would spill everything. Where is the Blackwater prison? What kind of environment is it? Ling Han asked. At the same time, there was anger in his heart. His mother was actually locked in a prison, making him want to go berserk. The Blackwater prison is where our sect imprisons criminals. Most of them are our sect's enemies, and there are also some disciples who betrayed our sect. Yu Kaiyu shook his head. When I was young, I could still go to Auntie, but those bastards from the AO clan kept on squeezing. 3 years ago, Auntie was sent to the Blackwater prison, and I haven't been able to see Auntie since. Woo, my poor Auntie, separated from her husband, and locked in that place where there's no daylight, those bastards from the AO clan. When I cultivate to the spiritual infant tier, I'll strangle one to death if I see one. Ling Han nodded. This cousin was on his side. How's the defense of the Blackwater prison? You want to break into the prison? Impossible. Yu Kaiyu shook his head repeatedly as if he was going to shake his head off. There are 2 flower blossom tier elites taking turns to keep watch, and even a fly can't fly in. Ling Han couldn't help but knock on the table. Come, he had to at least have the battle prowess of the flower blossom tier to be able to break into the Blackwater prison and rescue his mother. Damn it, he clearly knew that his mother was locked in the prison suffering, but he could only sit. Yu Kaiyu's alcohol tolerance wasn't bad, and he wouldn't go crazy after getting drunk, quickly falling asleep. Ling Han left the room to find Lu Yutong and the others. Zhu Wujiu and Can Yi already knew of his arrival, and were waiting for him. Ling Han was concerned about their cultivation advancement, then took out Restore Origin pills and distributed them. He was never stingy towards his own people. Later, I'll teach you guys some new martial arts techniques. You guys can strengthen your foundations, and then you'll be qualified to be called elites, Ling Han said. Since these people were all going to follow him, he naturally had to raise their abilities. Ling Han went to Guangyuan again. This originally boorish guy actually shut himself in his room for many days like a young lady. It was really a bit strange. He pushed open the door and entered, seeing Guangyuan sitting blankly, a bit lost in thought. Brother Guangyuan. Ling Han stretched out his hand and waved it in front of the other. Guangyuan reacted after a while. When it came to Ling Han, he was first startled, revealing a vigilant expression, and then said hesitantly, "Ling Han, it's me." Ling Han nodded. "What's wrong with you? What are you thinking so deeply?" Wang Yuan hesitated again and again. He wanted to say it, but didn't seem to know how to start. In the end, he sighed, and said, "I met someone. Old lover." Ling Han said with a smile. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so lost. In this world, perhaps only the word love could torture people like this. Wang Yuan smiled bitterly, and said, "It's the man of my old lover. This development wasn't so wonderful." Wang Yuan started a new topic, as if he also wanted to vent the frustration in his heart. No matter how hard he tried, he could not stop himself, and began to talk incessantly. "When I was still young, I left Rain Country and traveled the North region, seeking a way to become stronger. In this period of time, I met two people, both lone cultivators. The three of us formed a group and traveled the world, sharing life and death with each other. One of them was called Duan Jingji, and the other was called Nong Qingyu. Duan Jingji and I were brothers, and at the same time, we fell in love with Qingyu. In order not to hurt our friendship, Duan Jingji and I agreed to have a martial arts competition, and whoever lost would withdraw from the competition. In that half a year, I cultivated madly, and was confident that I could win against Duan Jingji. But a few days before the competition, Qingyu came to me and told me that she had already made her decision, and had chosen Duan Jingji. I naturally had no choice but to withdraw, but not long after, Duan Jingji got drunk. Only then did I know that he had obtained Qingyu through some shameful means, forcing her to choose him. I was furious, and gave Duan Jingji a beating. Then, I went to find Qingyu, and said that I didn't mind the relationship between her and Duan Jingji, as long as she was willing to leave with me. But she didn't agree. I was disheartened, and returned to Rain Country. In the blink of an eye, 20 years had passed. A few days ago, I actually met Duan Jingji, and he said that Qingyu had already been dead for 3 years. Chapter 359. A few minutes later, the woman came out from the pavilion, and couldn't help but look confused. She clearly remembered that there were several damaged pavilions and pavilions nearby, so why were they all gone now? She hadn't even finished her thought when she saw Ling Han had already swam over. With a wave of his hand, the pavilion behind her disappeared. The woman's face was filled with confusion. So those pavilions and pavilions had all been taken away by Ling Han. But she was immediately given a fright. A pavilion was taken away just like that. Just how big was this spatial ring of yours? Ling Han, however, didn't care. Even if everyone knew that his spatial ring was very big, so what? Could it be that they would still dare to snatch it? To offend a heaven-grade alchemist for a spatial spirit tool, no matter how big the spatial ring was, it wasn't worth it. Of course, if they knew the true use of the Black Tower, then putting aside the fact that Ling Han was only a heaven-grade alchemist, even immortals would rush over to snatch it. Ling Han began to excavate the underground buildings, and only the heads of quite a few of them were revealed. 1, 2, 3, he took great joy in collecting them. Even if it was all for nothing, it wouldn't waste too much time, but if there was some sort of harvest, then the profit would be great. He discovered a roof, and casually put it away, yet discovered that the roof was still there, and hadn't been taken into the Black Tower. He tried again, but still to no avail, which made him feel strange. Taking a closer look, this roof really was somewhat different. It was a pointed roof, and the entire roof was a single piece. There were no tiles, and it was golden in color. Why couldn't it be taken into the Black Tower? Ling Han waved his hands, and instantly, pieces of sand and sand rose up at the bottom of the lake, as if a flood dragon had come, twisting the entire bottom of the lake into a mess, turning it extremely turbid. It was difficult to see one's own fingers even if one stretched out his hand. Yet Ling Han was more and more astonished. At the bottom of the lake, more and more parts of this building were revealed. The golden walls were completely different from the other buildings, and they had already dug down about 9 meters, but still hadn't revealed the entire building. What was strange was that this building was actually triangular. The deeper one dug down, the larger the exposed area of the building. That earlier was only the apex of the pointed cone. What was even more strange was that Ling Han still hadn't reached a single window, as if what he had dug out was a complete piece of metal, only that it was ridiculously large. He became more and more curious, and the girl on the side also became interested, beginning to dig on the other side. The soil in the lake was loose, and these two people were both in the spiritual pedestal tier, so their strength was astonishing. Very soon, they had dug down to 300 feet, and more of this golden building was revealed. However, they still hadn't reached the bottom, and the building still had no windows or doors. Strange. More and more people were attracted over, and there weren't many absolute cold ice heart fish left in the lake. Thus, after a bout of fighting, everyone also ended their fishing and turned their gazes over. Truly rare, there was actually such a building at the bottom of the lake. Everyone made a move, digging towards the bottom of the lake. After digging down for close to 3,000 feet, they finally dug to the bottom, revealing the true appearance of this building. Divine Temple, Ling Han murmured. He had seen such a description in ancient records. In the divine realm, there was this kind of three-sided conical building, mostly used for sacrifices, but also used for other purposes. The golden divine temple was vast and majestic, and the 3,000 feet high seat was completely integrated. Ling Han didn't know if the vast lands had this kind of building ability, but if this was something from the divine realm, then it was another matter. There was a door on each of the three sides of the divine temple. It was a full 30 feet tall and 15 feet wide, and the golden door was practically integrated with the walls. If it wasn't for the various animal totems carved on the door, it would really be very difficult to discover. Ling Han stood in front of the door on one side. Guang Yuan and Yu Kaiyu had already come over, and were similarly extremely curious. There were many animals on the door that Ling Han had never seen before. Were they creatures from the divine realm? And on the other side, someone couldn't help but reach out and push the door. Hong, long, long. Instantly, the three doors opened at the same time, revealing three dark passageways. The lake water instantly flowed backwards, pouring into the divine temple. The divine temple seemed to have become a sky-swallowing giant whale, emitting a powerful suction force. A few people weren't on guard and were immediately sucked into the temple, while the majority hurriedly pushed the water flow, rising towards the surface of the lake. The suction force was astonishing. In a mere 10 minutes or so, the entire lake had completely disappeared, turning into a gigantic pit. A divine temple stood there, exuding a dazzling golden light as if it was forged from pure gold. Although martial artists viewed gold and silver as dung, such a large pile of dung towering in front of them was still shocking. When all the lake water had disappeared, the divine temple no longer produced a suction force, and just stood there quietly like a monument, causing people to instinctively feel reverence from the bottom of their hearts. Everyone cried out in surprise. Who would have thought that such a grand and strange building was actually hidden at the bottom of the lake? Ling Han, however, was very careful. Previously, a few people had been sucked into the divine temple along with the lake water, but now they didn't appear. What did this mean? Firstly, it was incomparably dangerous inside. They were trapped, and even dead. Secondly, there were a lot of secret treasures in the divine temple. Thus, those few people were in the process of collecting them, and had no intention of coming out. Which one was it? Ling Han's curiosity was burning endlessly. He decided to go in and take a look. This wasn't just one person's idea. Some people had already begun to form their own cliques, and wanted to enter as a group. It could be incomparably dangerous inside, and if they had secret treasures, their chances of success would be higher if they teamed up. And it was in this little time that more people rushed over from afar, and the number of people increased again. Are you guys going in or not? Ling Han asked Yu Kaiyu and Guang Yuan. Li Si-chan also walked over. Of course we're going in, Yu Kaiyu said hurriedly. If young Master Han wants to go in, then I will definitely follow, Guang Yuan said. All right, let's go in, Ling Han said with a smile. He had the Black Tower, so no matter what, he would be able to protect everyone's lives. Let's go. The four of them set out, and climbed down along the walls of the lake. This was a height of 3,000 meters, and now the water below had long since dried up, revealing the eerie white rocks below. If they directly jumped down, the possibility of falling and having their bones crushed was the highest. Li Si-chan was only in the gushing spring tier, so she climbed very slowly. Ling Han simply picked her up by the waist, and using only one hand to climb, he was even more agile than Yu Kai-yu and Guan Yuan put together, heading towards the bottom of the lake at an incredible speed. Now, this great lake was completely an abyss. This was a cliff, but a wet cliff, and it was mainly made of mud. If one was not careful, they could slip and fall down. It was only a matter of a few minutes, and Ling Han was the first to arrive at the bottom of the lake. He put Li Si-chan down. This beauty's cheeks were already flushed, and her beautiful eyes were like spring water, tender and alluring. Chapter 360. Sword Emperor, Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, Setting Sun Saber Emperor Ling Han was patient. At present, Zi Shuexian was wearing the Thunder Battle Armor, and it was in perfect condition. There were flashes of incandescent white lightning flickering on it, making her look like a valiant goddess of war. Ling Han discovered, to his surprise, that Zi Shuexian's ears were extraordinarily long, standing tall like a rabbit's, and her eyes were glowing with a white light, like two balls of lightning. Though he had not seen Zi Shuexian many times, he remembered clearly that Zi Shuexian's appearance should be no different from a normal person's, unlike now. Her ears were long and pointed, and her eyes were like lightning. Strange, why was he so certain that this girl was Zi Shuexian with one look? The first should be her hair. Ling Han had only seen one human with purple hair. The second was her appearance. Even though her eyes were like lightning now, her appearance was still that of Zi Shuexian. The third was the Thunder Battle Armor. This was her trademark. Ling Han had to admit that though this appearance was a little strange, it also had its own kind of beauty. At least, it was not something that Lu Yutong or Li Si-chan could compare to. They are about to catch up, Zi Shuexian suddenly said. This was naturally not said to Ling Han, but because she had activated the memory crystal, and was currently recording. I can sense their presence. Indeed, three figures appeared in the distance, and their speed was extremely fast. They seemed to be walking calmly step by step, but each step was 100 miles, as if they could shrink the ground into inches. Zi Shuexian's speed was not slow, but the speed of these three people was even faster. In a short while, the distance between the two sides had been shortened to within half a mile. Zi Shuexian, you are a genius of our race, why must you betray us and help outsiders? What does the extermination of the human race have to do with you? An old man in the middle of the three pursuers said. He had a head of white hair, and his eyes similarly glowed with white light, like balls of lightning. The difference was that there was a purple pattern on his forehead. It seemed piercing, but also seemed to be naturally formed. Not only him, the other two old men also had such a pattern, and it was also on their foreheads. The moment he opened his mouth, Ling Han was given a fright. Extermination of the human race? If others said such harsh words, Ling Han would only treat it as bullshit and bragging. However, the aura of any one of these three old men was not any weaker than Zi Shuexian's, so they were all at least in the Shattering Void tier. If three Shattering Void tier elites joined forces, then they would really be able to exterminate all living things in the vast lands. I have lived here for more than 300 years, and have long since become one with this world. How could I possibly watch helplessly as you all do such a deranged thing? Zi Shuexian said coldly, but her feet were moving very quickly. Obviously, she didn't want to start a war of words, but used the memory crystal to record it. Humph, you are a member of my Violet Lightning race. As long as you are, you will forever be. The elder on the left said with a cold expression. Let's talk this out. No matter what, Shuexian is an outstanding genius of our race in the lower realm. Even if she returned to the ancestral land, she would still be extraordinary. Shuexian, this old man knows that you're just muddle-headed for a moment. Hurry up and wake up. The elder on the right had a gentle smile on his face. It just so happened that one played the good cop and the other played the bad cop. Lower realm. Ling Han's heart clenched. These three old men were not as simple as shattering void tier elites, but had even come from the realm of immortals. Hiss, then it was extremely possible that these three people's abilities were even above the shattering void tier, immortals. Zi Shuexian was in the shattering void tier, but there was no purple pattern on her forehead. Perhaps that was a symbol that only immortals could possess. Additionally, their auras were stronger than Zi Shuexian's, and their speed was faster. Adding all these together, Ling Han guessed that these three people were immortals. However, immortals didn't seem to be that powerful. Putting aside the fact that the Azura Demon Emperor had been split into 9 parts and suppressed for several tens of thousands of years, these three old men should be in their peak condition, so why had they still not taken down Zi Shuexian after so long? Don't waste your breath. As long as I, Zi Shuexian, am alive, I will stop you all, Zi Shuexian said resolutely. Then don't blame me for being merciless. The old man in the middle had a stern look in his eyes. His right hand clenched into a fist, and with a Z, a white-colored lightning spear actually formed. Each and every one of the patterns on the spear shone brightly, exuding a terrifying aura. Even if Ling Han was only a bystander, he still felt as if he was experiencing it himself. If his actual body appeared here, merely this aura would be enough to shock him to death, even if he was still in the heaven tier in his last life. In front of true power, he was too weak. With a wave of the old man's hand, this lightning spear shot towards Zi Shuexian. Zi Shuexian gave a delicate shout, and a ball of lightning surged out from her body, fiercely shooting her out. Not only did it increase in speed, it also changed its trajectory. Just when Ling Han thought that she would be able to dodge this attack, he saw that lightning spear actually change its direction, and continue to shoot towards Zi Shuexian. On the other hand, Zi Shuexian's previous burst of speed was definitely an overload for her, causing her pretty face to instantly turn pale, and a sliver of blood appeared at the corner of her mouth. She definitely could not do it again. The lightning spear caught up to her, and she could only turn around to parry it. She opened up a screen of lightning, and with a ZZ sound, the will of martial art turned into a field of lightning talismans. Even Ling Han broke out in a cold sweat. This would have been enough to kill him 100 times in his last life. The lightning spear arrived, but was blocked by the screen of lightning. But with this pause, the three old men also closed in, and the 4 of them instantly engaged in a fierce battle. These 3 old men were indeed stronger, as if they had endless power, but it gave Ling Han a feeling that they seemed to be deliberately holding back, and had not used their full battle prowess. Thus, even if the 3 of them joined forces, they were still unable to capture Zi Shuexian. Humph, despicable power of regulations, suppressing our abilities. The 3 old men seemed to be a little displeased, and could not help but complain. Suppression by the power of regulations? Ling Han's mind spun quickly. With the level of ability he had in his last life, he was qualified to come into contact with some secrets, not to mention that he had explored various historical sites and obtained a large amount of information towards the end of his life. There were some conjectures made by predecessors, and they were only conjectures before, but combined with the scene before his eyes, Ling Han could confirm with a nod that they were correct. According to legend, the divine realm had its own rules, and the mortal realm had its own rules, each minding their own business. Why could shattering void tier cultivators break through the void and enter the divine realm? It was not because shattering void tier cultivators were strong enough to break through the heaven and earth, but because the strength of shattering void tier cultivators surpassed the limit that the mortal realm could bear, so they would be repelled to the divine realm, which had higher rules. In the divine realm, the heaven and earth were sturdier, and could withstand the torment of immortals. In other words, entering the divine realm from the mortal realm was a relatively easy process, because the mortal realm would automatically repel, which was equivalent to assistance. The prerequisite was that one's ability had to reach the shattering void tier, and possibly the moment when one broke through to the immortal realm. But to enter the mortal realm from the divine realm, that was difficult. Firstly, the divine realm was extremely sturdy, and it was very difficult to break through the void, and secondly, the mortal realm repelled immortals, so it was naturally difficult to sail against the current. Moreover, even if one came to the mortal realm, immortals would probably not be able to easily use the power of immortals. On the contrary, they would have to suppress their battle prowess, or else they would definitely be repelled by the mortal realm, and return directly to the divine realm. Ling Han immediately deduced that these three old men were indeed immortals, but their power had been suppressed. Thus, even though their abilities were clearly far superior to Zi Shuxian's, the current situation had been formed. Chapter 361. Zi Shuxian and the three old men battled fiercely. Ling Han was very shocked. Zi Shuxian was indeed a peerless genius. Though she was fighting three alone, she actually had the upper hand. This would really make one hold their head and exclaim in shock. A shattering void tier cultivator facing three immortals could actually have the upper hand, but that was the truth. Who asked this to be the vast lands, where the cultivation of immortals was suppressed? In a battle of the same tier, the ability of a peerless genius to fight surpassing cultivation levels could be displayed to the fullest. However, immortals were immortals, after all. Their power was suppressed, but their power was endless. As long as the battle dragged on long enough, then Zi Shuxian's power would definitely be exhausted, and she would be captured by them. The three old men did indeed do so. They were only continuously exhausting Zi Shuxian's power, neither too fast nor too slow. Zi Shuxian shouted repeatedly. Chi, chi, chi. The thunder battle armor on her body emitted blazing white lightning, turning into multiple lightning dragons that pounced towards the three old men to bite. This was obviously a powerful move, and instantly forced the three old men into a fluster. They expended a great deal of effort to exterminate these lightning dragons, and Zi Shuxian took the opportunity to escape from the battle. However, not long after, she was caught up again, and another fierce battle ensued. Ling Han bared his teeth. So the thunder battle armor was actually a level 10 spirit tool, or else how could it cause trouble for the three immortals? Their power was suppressed, but that was still the battle prowess of the shattering void tier. Heaven tier cultivators would be destroyed in a few punches and kicks. Back then, Zi Shuxian could only rank 4th among the 7 heaven tier elites. Was this because she was deliberately hiding her strength, or did the Sword Emperor and the others similarly have a level 10 spirit tool that could suppress the thunder battle armor? Ling Han sighed. Back then, he was completely focused on alchemy, and did not care about the ranking of martial art at all. He only thought that if he could reach the shattering void tier, he would be able to push open the doors to the realm of immortals, and suppress the bandit heavenly phoenix divine maiden. He was completely unaware of how wide the gap between him and these 6 people was. Now, he was very clear that he possessed battle prowess surpassing a dozen stars, and the installation of power from the Black Tower could raise his power by a whole major tier. This kind of battle prowess was practically nature-defying. Thus, in his previous life, he didn't have any trump cards in the field of martial art, but he was still able to be ranked 7th in the world and sit side by side with Sword Emperor and the others. Thinking about it now, he felt a little embarrassed. Fuck, a hero doesn't boast about his past achievements. If I meet the Sword Emperor and the others again, I'll definitely give them a good thrashing. Who asked me to spend all my energy on alchemy in my last life? In terms of my achievements in alchemy, even the Sword Emperor, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, and Nalan too have to obediently call me Grandmaster and beg me to concoct alchemical pills for them. Ling Han gave himself a thumbs up in his mind, and continued on his way. In reality, although the battle was fierce, it was just a repetition. Zi Shuxian could always rely on the thunder battle armor to turn things around in dire straits. With one strike, the 3 old men would be flustered, and she would take the opportunity to charge out, causing Ling Han to feel a little bored. However, the things recorded in the memory crystal could only be played according to the fixed process. It could not be fast-forwarded, paused, slow-forwarded, or rewound. Therefore, Ling Han could only wait quietly. But after fighting for a long while, not only did Ling Han get tired of it, the 3 old men also had enough. With the protection of the thunder battle armor, if we continue to fight like this, we will not be able to take her down at all, the old man on the left said. Indeed. The old man on the right nodded. The old man in the middle thought for a moment and said, then I will use a sliver of divine power to break the thunder battle armor. Then the regulations of this realm will immediately react and expel you, and may even severely injure you, the old man on the left said with a frown. We can't worry about that. If we let her leak the secret, the people of this realm will be prepared, and it may ruin the clan's 10,000-year plan. Moreover, if the matter is ruined on our side, the other clans will definitely make trouble for us, the old man in the middle said. Fine, then you be careful. The old man on the left nodded. No matter, I will control my power. As long as the thunder battle armor is broken, the backlash from the power of the realm will not be too serious. The expression of the old man in the middle was cold. Flashes of white lightning floated out of his blazing white eyes, and his aura instantly rose madly. In that instant, his power completely surpassed the shattering void tier. Immortal level. This was the power of immortals. Ling Han sensed it. In comparison, the power of the heaven tier in his last life was like a drop of water compared to the ocean. It was not qualified to be mentioned in the same breath at all. Moreover, this kind of power far surpassed the Azura demon emperor of that time. The other two old men shot away at the same time, as if they would be implicated if they stood there. Their reaction was correct. A crack in the void soundlessly appeared behind the old man in the middle, and immediately turned into a giant mouth. It suddenly opened and closed, and swallowed the old man in the middle. Was this the repulsion of the realm, directly sending him out of the vast lands? Ling Han was delighted. The old man's attack had not even been launched when he was repelled by the realm's power. Zi Shuexian had one less powerful enemy, and there should be a sliver of a chance of victory, but he had not even finished his thought. Xiao, the instant that crack closed, a blazing white spear of lightning shot out. This was different from the previous attack. The power of this spear of lightning was at least 100 times stronger, and what was more frightening was that there were multiple patterns entwined on the spear of lightning, and the pressure it emitted would make even shattering void tier elites tremble in fear. This was the most frightening attack of immortals. It was not power, but rather the will of martial art, a complete suppression of the will of martial art. Ling Han's expression changed. That old man still managed to launch an attack at the last moment before he was repelled by the realm's power. This was too frightening. Pooh! There was absolutely no chance for Zi Shuexian to dodge or parry. This spear directly pierced through her delicate body. So what if it was the thunder battle armor? A hole was directly pierced through. Ling Han understood. So this was how the hole on the thunder battle armor came about. Ah! Zi Shuexian screamed. She had been struck in the heart. This spear of lightning had directly pierced through her chest, and her heart had definitely exploded. Even if she was in the shattering void tier, she should not be able to survive. Ling Han's heart involuntarily tightened. Could it be that Zi Shuexian was about to perish? Xiao, but Zi Shuexian instead sprinted madly as she took off the thunder battle armor, and said, Boundless Mountain, Clear Harmony Palace Hall, there are all the answers. People of the future, the things you have been told previously were all lies. The real answer is there, and you must obtain it. Otherwise, the disaster will repeat itself. With a flick of her hand, the thunder battle armor instantly pierced through the air, and her figure became smaller and smaller below, and very quickly disappeared. Obviously, the memory crystal was on the thunder battle armor. The thunder battle armor traversed an immeasurable distance, and finally landed on the ground. Every pattern had lost its luster, as if it had become the most ordinary battle armor. This state of stillness persisted for about a few days, and then the scene suddenly stopped. It should be that the memory crystal's capacity was limited, and it was full. Ling Han's divine sense automatically left the memory crystal, and appeared inside the Black Tower. As the ruler of this place, he could clearly determine that not even a breath's time had passed. The things that happened in his divine sense did not have the temporal nature of reality. It was just like a dream, a lifetime in the dream, but when he woke up, only a few hours had passed. Innumerable guesses rose up in Ling Han's mind, and there was also a chill that spread from the bottom of his heart. Chapter 362. According to historical records, more than 9,000 years ago, there was a great chaos and a great calamity. Countless people died, and as a result, there was a gap in martial art and alchemy Tao. Afterwards, the Heaven's Sword sect, the Absolute Saber sect, and other sects stood out and joined forces to quell the chaos. Only then was there peace for more than 8,000 years. Compared to the calamity of annihilation at that time, the fighting and killing now was simply a piece of cake. Ling Han had a guess. The great chaos at that time had been caused by the party represented by those three old men. They were of the same race as Zi Shuexian, and wanted to bring her back to the immortal realm, but were rejected by Zi Shuexian, who wanted to live and die with the lower realm. Ling Han had also seen her end with his own eyes. Though he had not seen the final scene of her dying in battle, without the thunder battle armor, her heart had also been destroyed, and there were still two immortal-level pursuers behind her. How could she have survived? Zi Shuexian was a disciple of the Blue Thunder sect, and now, the Blue Thunder sect was established in the Middle State. It was said that they were one of the main forces that had resisted the Great Chaos all those years ago. According to what he had said, the clansmen of Zi Shuexian should have nothing to do with the Blue Thunder sect. They had only discovered that there were clansmen of their own in this sect, and thus wanted to bring them back to the realm of immortals. Jiang Yufeng and several hundred other Heaven-tier elites battled a single Shattering Void-tier elite. Judging by the time, it was extremely possible that that person was an invader from the realm of immortals, or even an immortal. However, he was suppressed by the power of the realm, and could only possess the battle prowess of the Shattering Void-tier. In the end, he was dragged along by so many Heaven-tier elites and died. It made sense in theory. But the problem was, why did the realm of immortals want to invade the lower realm? In everyone's opinion, the immortal realm should be rich in resources, with godly medicines growing everywhere. Just picking a random stock and consuming it would allow an ordinary person to instantly become a god. Even if they did not become a god, they would still be able to charge up to the Heaven tier, Shattering Void tier, or something like that. Such a rich and fertile place, which part of the vast lands would it be compared to? It was just like how many great forces in the northern region disdained the desolate north. So what if they occupied the desolate north? Only unranked forces would want to fight for a place in the desolate north. Could it be that there was also such a force in the immortal realm, and because they could no longer survive in the immortal realm, they ran over to the lower realm? No, that was not right. Those three old men had said that they wanted to bring Zi Shuexian back, which meant that they did not intend to stay here for long. Furthermore, Zi Shuexian had also mentioned that the other party wanted to exterminate the entire human race. This was not something that a conqueror would do. Is a ruler still a ruler without his subjects? The key was Zi Shuexian's last sentence. She said that everything the people of the future generations had heard was a lie. What did that mean? Judging from her age, she must be referring to the catastrophe nearly 10,000 years ago. That's fake, just a lie. Ling Han could not help but feel a headache coming on. What had originally been a very logical story seemed to have been completely overturned by Zi Shuexian's brainless words. But Zi Shuexian did not hesitate to fight to the death to deliver these words. Could she possibly be joking? Of course not. Come, he definitely had to make a trip to Infinite Boundless Mountain's Clear Harmony Palace Hall, and find the answer that Zi Shuexian had buried. He knew where Infinite Boundless Mountain was. The central region. Of course, whether or not it was still called Infinite Boundless Mountain was uncertain. Moreover, after 10,000 years, could the Clear Harmony Hall still stand? Let's talk about it later. Ling Han sighed. You clearly had the memory crystal on hand, so why didn't you just directly record all the answers within, instead forcing me to make another trip to Infinite Boundless Mountain? Small Tower, can you restore this battle armor? He asked. No. Small Tower swayed left and right. This was its action of shaking its head, and if it nodded, it would sway back and forth. Ling Han already understood. It paused, then said, "But, I can dispel the impurities within, so this battle armor should still be able to be used for a while." Ling Han was overjoyed, and said, "Then come quickly." Small tower shook slightly, and a mighty force surged out. The thunder battle armor immediately floated in midair, trembling slightly. Z, the vein-like patterns lit up and dimmed. But after a while, this battle armor fell to the ground with a paw. "That's enough," Small Tower said expressionlessly. Ling Han was no longer surprised. Back then, it had also wiped out the tool spirit of the demon birth sword with such ease and joy, not to mention that this was only a damaged 10th level spirit tool. He put on the thunder battle armor, and attempted to activate this spirit tool. Z, the vein-like patterns lit up, and instantly, there were innumerable lightning leaping around his body. Not only his torso, but his entire body, forming a layer of lightning barrier. Ling Han raised his hand, and a blazing white lightning ray opened up and shot into the distance, turning into a sharp sword. He threw another punch, and the lightning ray turned into a blazing white fist with terrifying might. He gave a long howl, and both his hands struck out repeatedly. Fist chi and sword chi shot out together, and with the support of the thunder battle armor, they turned into blazing white lightning swords and lightning fists. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh loudly. This thunder battle armor increased his battle prowess by at least 5 stars, and this was only in terms of attack. He hadn't tried it in terms of defense, but he believed that the defense of this lightning barrier definitely wouldn't be weak. Presently, he could only activate a portion of the vein-like patterns on the thunder battle armor, which meant that as his cultivation level increased, the power of the thunder battle armor would also increase accordingly. However, its limit couldn't possibly reach the shattering void tier, because the 2 large holes in the front and back were still there, and with a portion of the vein-like patterns missing, it couldn't possibly display its strongest might again. Zi Shuexian, I haven't had many dealings with you in the past, but the choice you made really impressed me. Don't worry, I will definitely find the answer you left behind, and won't let the disaster repeat itself. Ling Han said cautiously. After making a promise, he put on his jacket. The thunder battle armor was a high-level spirit tool, and could actually be adjusted according to the user's physique. Thus, even though he was obviously taller than Zi Shuexian, he didn't feel the slightest bit of tightness wearing it. There was also that bottle. Ling Han opened it, and there was only a drop of purple-colored blood inside, exuding a powerful aura. It immediately made his skin feel as if it was being cut by a knife, as if it was about to split open. Zi Shuexian's blood? Ling Han closed the bottle. This might be the key to opening the place where Zi Shuexian had buried the answer in the Clear Harmony Palace Hall, so he couldn't use it now. He exited the Black Tower. There was still some time before dinner, and if he wanted to go to the Duan residence, it would have to be late at night, and it was still a bit early now. Since he had nothing to do, he called Lu Yutong and the others over, and began to teach them martial arts. First, he asked them to tell him about the problems they had encountered during cultivation, and he would answer them one by one. After that, he taught different cultivation techniques and martial arts techniques according to the differences of each person. Lu Yutong didn't need to be taught. Zhu Wujiu also practiced the sword, and Ling Han also taught him the 4 seasons sword technique. Can you practice the saber? Unfortunately, Ling Han didn't obtain any supreme saber technique from the setting Sun Saber Emperor, but there was no lack of saber techniques in his mind. Thus, he found a Black Demon Saber technique for Can Yi to learn. This was a black grade high-level martial arts technique, and it was one of the better ones at this level, almost entering Earth grade. At present, Lu Yutong was in the 8th layer of the Gushing Spring tier, while Zhu Wujiu was in the 5th layer of the Gushing Spring tier. Their power had improved greatly, and this was naturally due to the effects of alchemical pills. Ling Han warned them repeatedly that when they reached the 9th layer of the Gushing Spring tier, they definitely couldn't be in a rush to break through. They had to strengthen their foundations to the point that they couldn't rely on, and only then would they be able to take the next step. Otherwise, the cultivation that was built up through the accumulation of alchemical pills would really be too weak, and it would be impossible for them to climb to the highest tier. At night, Guang Yuan finally went downstairs to have dinner together. Then, they quietly waited for the arrival of midnight. Chapter 363. The 6 red-furred monsters did not dodge at all, and continued to pounce. The tall mountains crashed down, and they each threw out a punch to meet them. Amidst the ripples of origin power, cracks appeared on these mountains, but they did not shatter. Pang, 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 pang. They were all struck, but they only staggered for a moment before continuing to attack, incomparably ferocious. Such solid defense, Ling Han nodded. Although it could not compare to his body of iron sheet, it was still quite shocking. There were pitifully few in the spiritual pedestal tier that could cultivate such a defense. Hang, it's only a so-so. The man that was attacked sneered, and his figure slid back. He raised his sword again, and another 7 flashes of sword chi shot out. Help! The others also knew that the red-furred monsters were not very powerful, so they naturally had no fear. But it was at this moment that the bodies of the 6 red-furred monsters all shone with a bloody light. They directly charged past the man's sword chi, and forcibly arrived in front of him. 5 of the red-furred monsters grabbed his limbs and head, and the last one grabbed onto the man's body. Pooh! Under everyone's shocked gazes, the 5 red-furred monsters exerted force at the same time, and actually forcibly tore off the man's limbs and head. Blood splattered, and it was as if the sky had been dyed red. It was too violent, too bloody, everyone was stunned. This kind of scene was something that they could not accept. Pa, 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 pa. The 6 red-furred monsters simultaneously threw away the severed limbs and head in their hands, and fixed their eyes on another man, pouncing at him. Suppress him together, everyone hurriedly shouted. They definitely could not be defeated by these 6 red-furred monsters one by one. In the battle between the two sides, the humans naturally had the advantage in terms of numbers. Moreover, their battle prowess was stronger, but these red-furred monsters were like undying monsters. They were stabbed and slashed, but not a single drop of blood splattered out. It was as if they were puppets. Moreover, they had a special ability. When a red light flashed on their bodies, they could ignore the bombardment of origin power, and directly pass through it. This caused great trouble for everyone. They obviously had more people, and obviously were stronger, but they were being beaten into a sorry state by the 6 red-furred monsters. Strange, what kind of ability is this? Ling Han murmured, curiosity flashing in his eyes. Could it be that this was another special ability of the beings of the immortal realm? Young Master Han, should we go and help? Guang Yuan asked. We'll go, but be careful. Ling Han nodded. Yes. Guang Yuan immediately rushed out. Yu Kaiyu scratched his head, and said, strange, why do I have to listen to this guy's words? As he said this, he also rushed out, his fighting spirit unwavering. Ling Han did not make a move, and only observed carefully. He would make a move when Guang Yuan and Yu Kaiyu were in danger, but at other times, he would observe more. He had never heard of this red-furred monster, it was too strange. His eyes swept over, and an expression of shock appeared on his face. That was because the pieces of flesh that had been dismembered earlier were currently undergoing an astonishing transformation. A clump of red hair grew out from the flesh, and as if it had a life of its own, its head, limbs were all wriggling towards the torso. Very soon, the 6 parts came together, forming a complete human body, but it was covered in red hair. A new red-furred monster had appeared. A bolt of lightning flashed through Ling Han's mind, and a guess welled up in his mind. These 6 red-furred monsters couldn't be the 6 dried corpses that had been killed first, right? He immediately dashed out, drew out the demon birth sword, and slashed at one of the red-furred monsters. In the midst of the sword chi, the red hair danced in the air, and this red-furred monster was instantly shaved clean by Ling Han, revealing a body that looked like a dried corpse. There were even a few tattered pieces of cloth on it. Luo Hang. A martial artist said in a trembling voice, "He's Luo Heng." I recognized the tattoo on his hand. Ling Han focused his gaze, and sure enough, there was a tattoo on the red-furred monster's arm. Although it was hard to distinguish, one could still make out that it was the image of a fierce tiger. Everyone was shocked. Luo Heng was one of the first to enter the second floor, and was turned into a dried corpse by the blood-sucking bugs. Why did he suddenly turn into a red-furred monster and come back to life? There's another one. Someone discovered the seventh red-furred monster, although it had just stood up shakily, and hadn't joined the battle yet. Where's Su Ming's corpse? Someone asked in a trembling voice. Everyone was speechless. This dried corpse could turn into a red-furred monster, so why couldn't it be torn apart? What kind of damned place was this? The dead could also come back to life, although it couldn't be considered a true resurrection. Ling Han drew his sword, activating the 2 patterns on the demon birth sword. He didn't believe that even a level 10 spirit tool couldn't kill these monsters. Pu, Piu, Piu, his figure flashed, and one strike after another, forcibly splitting the red-furred monster into 2 pieces. However, a strange scene appeared. The 2 pieces of the red-furred monster actually stuck together again, and became one again. An undying monster, Ling Han made a prompt decision, and said, "To the 3rd floor." Yu Kaiyu and Guang Yuan obviously wouldn't have the slightest objection to his words, and immediately climbed the stairs, charging towards the 3rd floor. Ling Han put away the demon birth sword, and also leapt onto the stairs. Even someone with such powerful battle prowess like Ling Han ran away, so how would the others dare to stay? These red-furred monsters couldn't be killed at all, and even if someone hit a spiritual infant tier law decree, could it suppress them? Although Ling Han climbed the stairs later than Guang Yuan and Yu Kaiyu, he caught up from behind. With a big stride, he was the first to enter the 3rd floor. The scenery immediately changed. This was actually a primeval forest. There were tall trees everywhere, and countless old vines intertwined, thicker than houses. Who knew how many years it had been growing for it to reach such a scale? However, in the extreme distance, a divine temple was currently standing at the peak of a mountain, radiating a brilliant golden light. Xiao, Guang Yuan and Yu Kaiyu also leapt out, and then more people appeared. However, not a single red-furred monster charged up, as if each floor had a strict limit. Ao! A beast's roar rang out in the distance, as if it could tear apart the sky. Everyone was shocked. Even though they were so far away, they could still feel the terrifying deterrence contained in that roar. It was at least a flower blossom tier existence, or even a spiritual infant tier demonic beast. What to do now? Below, there were unkillable red-furred monsters, and above, there were flower blossom tier and even spiritual infant tier demonic beasts. It was truly a dilemma. Ling Han, however, only looked at the golden divine temple on the distant mountain peak. He had a feeling that there, he might be able to obtain the answer regarding the secret of this divine temple. Let's go. He nodded towards Guang Yuan and Yu Kaiyu. The 3 of them set off, walking towards the divine temple in the distance. The others all shrugged. The mountain peak wasn't far, but they definitely wouldn't be close if they walked all the way there. Who knew how many terrifying demonic beasts they would encounter? Let's charge back. That's right. Although the red-furred monster can't be killed, its own battle prowess isn't ridiculously strong. It's still stronger than spiritual infant tier demonic beasts. Let's go back. Most people wanted to retreat, and only a few people decided to follow Ling Han and the others forward. At least, the 3 of them would scout ahead, and if there was any danger, the 3 of them would be the first to bear it. However, these people were immediately dumbfounded because Ling Han summoned the golem. The 3 of them all stood on the golem's back, and the large golem carried them towards the mountain peak. Chapter 364. Ling Han almost fell over. Where did this guy come from? When did you become blind? He asked in annoyance. Yu Kaiyu laughed mischievously, and said, if you didn't lie to the little girl, why would Hunyo keep nagging me that you're Nyos? Ling Han was dumbfounded. Hunyo was really a mischievous little girl, and was also very smart. She knew that Yukayu was her cousin, so she changed the path of relatives. If she could still find his mother, with the little girl's skill, would she be able to make Yu Hongchang smile from ear to ear and acknowledge her as her little wife? In another 10 years or so, the little girl would become a big girl, and for a genius like Ling Han, breaking through to the flower blossom tier was a sure thing. Then, 10 years for a lifespan of at least a few hundred years was not a matter of the blink of an eye. Ling Han couldn't help but shake his head. How did Hunyo's little brain grow? Since you like the little girl, then let me have the other 2 big girls. Yukayu said, arching his arm around Ling Han's shoulder. Ha, ha. Ling Han laughed and said, one of them is my little female attendant, and the other is my alchemy apprentice. Think about it yourself, if you marry one of them, what would you call me? Pei, you're too despicable, occupying the toilet but not taking a shit. I despise you. Yukayu said, filled with righteous indignation. Less nonsense, we've arrived at the Duan residence. Ling Han pressed his hand down. They had already arrived in front of the Duan residence. Isn't this Duan Jingji's home? Yukayu looked very strange. You know him? Ling Han asked. Sort of, he's come to visit the sect before. After all, he's a spiritual pedestal tier warrior with impressive strength, and the Sea Breeze City is right under our sect's feet. Every move he makes has wide implications. With the appearance of such a powerful warrior, he would have to report to our sect no matter what and express his stance. He wouldn't break the rules of our sect, Yukayu said with a nod. He paused for a moment, then said, what are we doing here? Don't tell me you want to have sex with someone's daughter who is only a few years old. Screw you. Ling Han rolled his eyes. As he undid the warning array formation, he said, you'll know in a moment. I hope you won't yell all over the place. Who do you think I am? I don't even have that much self-control, Yukayu snorted. 10 minutes later. What the hell? What the hell? Yukayu's face turned pale. Is this really a fucking place for the living? Why isn't there a single person? Ling Han and Guang Yuan looked at each other and smiled. They had deliberately brought Yukayu around the residence first, and the result was that this empty environment caused Yukayu's hair to stand on end. Come. As Ling Han walked, he told Yukayu about the dispute between Guang Yuan and Duan Jingji. Only then did Yukayu realize why they had come here. But now, his curiosity was piqued. What was going on with the Duan mansion? Why did everyone disappear in the middle of the night? They arrived at the great hall that they had seen during the day, and began to search carefully. But this secret passage seemed to be extraordinarily well hidden. They searched for an hour, but still couldn't find its location. Ling Han stopped, and activated the Eye of Truth. Pain, pain, pain. Previously, when battling the 7 sons of Ao family, Ling Han had overused the Eye of Truth, and it hadn't completely recovered yet. Now, the moment he activated the Eye of Truth, a stream of blood flowed down from his right eye, looking very frightening. He hurriedly withdrew his mystical power. With a sweep just now, he had discovered the location of the secret passage. This was really very easy. But the secret passage was easy to find, but the mechanism to activate was hard to say. Because they still didn't want to alert the enemy, they naturally couldn't cause too much damage, and used a simple and crude method to directly smash it down. Fortunately, the 3 of them were in the spiritual ocean tier, and their divine sense was very sensitive. After confirming the location of the secret passage, it was much easier to find the mechanism. After another 10 minutes or so, they found a secret on a wall. They moved a picture frame lightly, and a dark hole appeared on the floor tiles. Are we really going in? Yukayu asked a little hesitantly. He wasn't the least bit stupid. There were so many places in the Duan residence, yet it was like a haunted house, and there was a secret passage here, so it was possible that everyone was inside. They didn't live in a perfectly good house, but stayed underground. Just thinking about it, there was something fishy. Moreover, Duan Jingji was in the spiritual pedestal tier, and if he discovered them, wouldn't he be silenced? Of course. Ling Han nodded. His curiosity had been completely ignited. Aren't you afraid that we won't be able to come out after going in? Yu Kaiyu asked with a long face, feeling that he had really boarded a pirate ship. It's fine, I'm here. Ling Han said confidently. This wasn't an exaggeration. With the Black Tower to hide in, at least in a small place like the vast lands, there was no need to worry about any danger to their lives. How could Yu Kaiyu know? However, he was also clear that he couldn't dissuade Ling Han. What's more, he was also curious, and a little wary. Under the eyes of the Winter Moon sect, what was Duan Jingji planning to do? They entered the secret passage and went all the way down. It was very deep, and only after walking for about 100 meters did the stairs stop descending. A long corridor appeared, and on both sides of the corridor were doors, which should correspond to many rooms. Ling Han stuck his ear to a door and listened for a while, then made a hand gesture to push the door open. Guang Yuan and Yu Kaiyu nodded, indicating that they were ready. If there was anyone inside, they would restrain the other party at lightning speed. Ling Han pressed both hands on the door, and with a little force, the door opened. There was no lock on the inside. Woo! The three of them immediately covered their noses as a strong stench wafted out from inside. Shoo, but they still immediately jumped in. Their gazes swept around, and they all looked shocked. This room was very small, so small that it could only accommodate a large bed, but what was shocking was that it wasn't a bed inside, but a coffin. Bad luck, bad luck. Yu Kaiyu hurriedly retreated. No wonder there was a stench. This was a tomb room, and a corpse had rotted, so there would naturally be a stench. Guang Yuan also ran out, and Ling Han was the last one. No need, this should be an underground tomb, Yu Kaiyu said. Ling Han shook his head, and said, if this is an underground tomb, then where did all the living people run to? This was the most puzzling part. Again. The three of them continued forward, and a cross-shaped fork appeared in front of them. More doors appeared. Continue forward. Ling Han was determined. He would definitely explore this place to the end. They continued forward, and suddenly, an intense stench wafted over, as if there was a mountain of corpses in front of them. It was enough to make people faint from the stench. The three of them did not look good, and their faces were pale from the disgust. They held their breaths. With the abilities of the spiritual ocean tier, it was definitely not a problem for them to hold their breaths for an hour or so. An underground river appeared in front of them, and floating in the river were corpses after corpses. Chapter 365. In a large residence in the city, everyone lived underground in the middle of the night, and this place was extremely stinky, and there was even a river full of corpses. It was strange no matter how one looked at it. Where did these corpses come from? Ling Han suddenly had a flash of inspiration and said, go back. He immediately walked, arriving in front of a door and pushing it open. There was still a coffin inside. Yu Kaiyu and Guang Yuan both walked over, and one of them asked, what did you find? This morning, we clearly saw many people walk out from the houses above, which means they're all here. But we didn't find any people now, why is that? Ling Han asked. Guang Yuan's expression immediately changed, and he said, you can't be suspecting that those people are hiding in the coffins, right? How is that possible? Such a stench, just smelling it would suffocate one to death. For us, this is a stench, but for some people, this is a holy place for cultivation, Ling Han said indifferently. How is that possible? Yu Kaiyu immediately exclaimed. Ling Han didn't speak, only grabbing the coffin and pushing it hard. The coffin opened, and a person appeared, wearing bright clothes, his face vivid and lifelike, not like a corpse at all. This is someone from the Duan residence, I saw him during the day. Guang Yuan said, his voice trembling slightly. He was in the spiritual ocean tier, and he basically wouldn't forget anyone he saw, not to mention such a fresh thing that happened so early in the morning. But he was still alive in the day, but at night, he was lying in a coffin, emitting a stench all over. How could people accept this? How is that possible? Yu Kaiyu also said in a low voice. But the person in the coffin seemed to really become a corpse, with no intention of waking up at all. Ling Han shook his head, and said, as long as it's related to a sect, then it's possible. What sect? Yu Kaiyu asked in shock. Thousand Corpse Sect. Ling Han said solemnly. Yu Kaiyu's expression changed again, wanting to refute, but unable to speak. Previously, there was indeed news from the fallen Moon Gorge, saying that the Thousand Corpse Sect had risen from the ashes. But the benevolent saw benevolence, and the wise stopped spreading rumors. The Winter Moon Sect didn't believe that the Thousand Corpse Sect that had disappeared for tens of thousands of years could see the light again. But seeing the scene before him, Yu Kaiyu had no choice but to believe it. Aside from the Thousand Corpse Sect, which other force would have corpses as their companions? In this kind of environment, how could a normal person possibly live in it? This sect has really come back from the ashes, he said with a pale face. The number of sects that had been annihilated in history could be said to be innumerable, but none of them were as notorious as the Thousand Corpse Sect. Moreover, their infamy had lasted for tens of thousands of years, and when people thought of them, they would gnash their teeth in anger. From this, it could be seen how much the Thousand Corpse Sect had angered the heavens and the people back then. That's right, everyone will eventually die, but after they die, they still have to be dug up and turned into corpse soldiers. Who could tolerate that? What do you think? Ling Han looked at the person in the coffin. Previously, he had only taken a quick glance at the coffin, but now that he looked carefully, he could see that there were strands of corpse chi circulating around the person in the coffin. In the beginning, how could he possibly have thought that this would be a branch of the Thousand Corpse Sect? Return to the mountain immediately and send this news back to the sect, Yu Kaiyu said quickly. If the Thousand Corpse Sect really came back, not only would this news be sent back to the sect, but it would also have to be announced to the whole world, mobilizing the whole world to resist this force. Otherwise, when the Thousand Corpse Sect grew stronger, then the graves of all the elites in the world would probably be dug up. Ling Han revealed an attentive expression, shook his head, and said, I'm afraid we won't be able to leave. Gagaga, you're right. A voice suddenly rang out from behind them. Yu Kaiyu and Guang Yuan turned at the same time, and saw a man in his 40s standing at the door. He had a medium build and a handsome appearance. Though he was no longer in his youth, he could still instantly kill a large group of antis. Duan Zhengji. Guang Yuan's eyes widened. Duan Zhengji smiled faintly, stroked his chin, and said, Guang Yuan, I was still pondering when I should invite you over and refine you into a corpse soldier. I didn't think that you'd actually deliver yourself to me. Guang Yuan's level was too low, and he lacked understanding of the Thousand Corpse Sect. However, the term corpse soldier made one's hair stand on end, so it couldn't be anything good no matter what. His heart trembled, and he said, How did Qing Yu die? Now, he naturally wouldn't believe that known Qing Yu had died of illness, and couldn't help but explode in anger. Qing Yu. Duan Zhengji smiled faintly. Oh, she objected to me joining the sacred sect, so I could only refine her into a corpse soldier so that she could accompany me for eternity. You're not human. Guang Yuan rebuked angrily, his eyes looking as if they were about to spit fire. Duan Zhengji laughed loudly, and said, Of course I'm not human. Since I've entered the divine sect, my life form has already surpassed the level of humans. In my eyes, you guys are merely food, merely materials to be refined into corpse soldiers. Forget it, I can't be bothered to waste my breath on you guys. All of you, obediently become corpse soldiers for me. After he finished speaking, he actually turned and left. Don't run. Guang Yuan was furious and anxious. He didn't care that Duan Zhengji was in the spiritual pedestal tier, and his abilities were far above his own. He wanted to chase after him, but he had just arrived at the door when he saw a hand slapping towards him. It was as thin as dried bones, and was completely black, emitting a strong stench. Guang Yuan hurriedly stopped and shot out a punch. The intent of martial art wrapped around his fist, and 2 flashes of fist chi burst forth. Pang! He clashed head-on with the opponent's attack, and his body was instantly sent flying back. However, the opponent didn't gain any advantage either. Similarly, he was sent flying back a few steps, and only stopped when he crashed into the wall behind him. What the hell is this? Yu Kai-yu immediately cried out in shock. What blocked Guang Yuan was a half-rotten corpse, but as if there was an invisible string pulling it, it was actually able to move as it wished. Immediately, it charged back and charged into the house. This house was pitifully small in the first place, and with another person entering, there was practically no space to move around. It was extremely cramped. Guang Yuan attacked madly. He was already beyond furious, he wanted to kill Duan Jingji. That's a corpse soldier. Through a special method, a corpse is refined into something like a puppet, Ling Han said. If it weren't for the fact that it requires human remains as materials, such a creation could really be called a genius. You're actually impressed? Yu Kai-yu sucked in his teeth. From a certain perspective, yes, but... Ling Han's gaze turned cold. This 1,000-corpse sect must be eliminated. I agree with that, but now, it seems that it's even difficult for us to escape, Yu Kai-yu said. Don't worry, I've said that we can leave safely. Ling Han smiled calmly. He stretched out his left hand, and pressed it towards the person in the coffin. Multiple black patterns appeared. This was the power of regulation obtained after refining demonic qi. Previously, Feng Yan's entire left leg was gone when he touched it. Pooh, he pressed down with his palm, and a large hole instantly appeared in the chest of the person in the coffin. However, that person opened his eyes, and used his deathly pale eyes to stare at Ling Han. But in the next instant, his head tilted to one side, and he died completely. Chapter 366. Duan Jingji. Guang Yuan's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He clashed fiercely with that corpse soldier, wanting to chase away this obstacle and catch up to Duan Jingji to demand justice from him. However, the corpse soldier was unafraid of death and pain, and did not yield an inch, battling fiercely with him. Strange, Duan Jingji left just like that. Yu Kai-yu was surprised. If a spiritual pedestal tier elite attacked, then taking down 3 spiritual ocean tier elites like them would be a piece of cake. Ling Han smiled, and said, Duan Jingji should have full confidence, so he didn't bother to attack. Now that we're surrounded, you can still laugh. Yu Kai-yu said, gritting his teeth. Then what expression do you want me to give? Ling Han laughed loudly, and said heroically, don't worry, since I brought you guys out, I'll bring you guys back. I hope it's not 3 corpses. Yu Kai-yu sighed. Not 3 corpses, but 3 corpse soldiers. A voice came from outside the door, but it wasn't Duan Jingji, but another man. There's someone else. Yu Kai-yu's expression changed. Ling Han rolled his eyes at him, and said, isn't that obvious? How many people are there in the Duan residence? If they were all corpse soldiers, then wouldn't they all be exposed in the day? They're the true disciples of the 1,000-corpse sect, and corpse soldiers are just tools. A young man actually knows so much about our sect. A surprised voice came from outside. Ling Han nodded at Yu Kai-yu, and said, go help Brother Guang, we'll charge out. Yu Kai-yu nodded, and immediately leaped over Guang Yuan's head, launching a punch towards that corpse soldier. Just now, Guang Yuan and the corpse soldier had clashed head-on, and both were retreating. Yu Kai-yu followed up with another punch, instantly causing the corpse soldier to retreat repeatedly. Why do I have to listen to that brat? Yu Kai-yu scratched his head. Just now, he didn't think carefully and just followed Ling Han's words. Now that he thought about it, he felt gloomy, he was the senior brother. Guang Yuan, however, took up his position and punched out again. The stone room was much bigger. After 3 punches, the corpse soldier was forced out. Ling Han and the other 2 took the opportunity to rush out, but when they saw the scene outside, they couldn't help but grit their teeth. There were a lot of corpse soldiers, but there were also a lot of normal-looking people. Obviously, these were the disciples of the Thousand Corpse sect, the people who controlled the corpse soldiers. That's the third elder of the Zhang family, Zhang Hu. Yu Kaiyu suddenly exclaimed, pointing at a corpse soldier. Then, he pointed at another corpse soldier. Li Dingyi of the Li family. He pointed at the third corpse soldier. Gu Shuntong of the Gu family. He counted them one by one and counted at least 10 corpse soldiers. He couldn't help but be aghast. You guys are truly insane. These people are already dead, yet you still dig them up and refine them into corpse soldiers. Tisk, TSK, what do you mean insane? They're already dead anyway, so wouldn't it be better to let them play a part and make some contributions? A man close to 50 years old said. And you three, when we make our move later, we'll try to be gentle and not damage your bodies too severely. 3 spiritual ocean tier warriors, if we're lucky, the corpse soldiers refined can also retain this kind of strength. Lunatics, all lunatics. Yu Kaiyu said sternly. He took out a pair of boxing gloves from his spatial ring and put them on, immediately activating them. Streaks of golden patterns lit up, and his fighting spirit soared into the sky like the flames of war. Kill them. The people of the Thousand Corpse sect controlled the corpse soldiers and surrounded Ling Han and the other two. Limited by tier and the conditions for raising corpses, the disciples of the Thousand Corpse sect could normally only raise 1 corpse soldier, and a few could raise 2. The disciples here were obviously normal, and couldn't possibly have 3 lives corpse caskets like Ronghuan Xian, so each of them only raised 1 corpse soldier. However, there were more than a dozen people here, so naturally there were also more than a dozen corpse soldiers. Every one of them was in the spiritual ocean tier, and was a first-tier silver-armored corpse. With absolute numbers, along with the corpse soldier's characteristic of not fearing death or injury, wouldn't it be easy to deal with 3 spiritual ocean tier warriors? Both Yu Kaiyu and Guang Yuan had stern expressions on their faces, especially Guang Yuan. He wanted to seek justice for Nong Qingyu, so he had to protect his own life even more. The weak would only howl in grief, while the strong would speak through their fists. Corpse soldiers had no emotions and couldn't speak. Under orders, they charged towards Ling Han and the other two. Yu Kaiyu and Guang Yuan immediately moved. Peng, 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 they were already fighting with the corpse soldiers. Neither of them had any experience fighting corpse soldiers, so they treated corpse soldiers as if they were humans, causing them to be surrounded by danger. This was because you could punch a martial artist in the head and force them to retreat, but corpse soldiers didn't care so much. If you wanted to fight, just fight. I'll also punch you in the head, or wipe your throat. If a corpse soldier was hit, the worst that could happen was that their head would be smashed crooked or knocked off. It was fine, they could just put it back. But if a martial artist was hit by this move, would he still be alive? However, the two of them had rich battle experience and quickly adjusted, but they still couldn't deal with the corpse soldiers. That was because no matter how injured these things were, it wouldn't affect their battle prowess. How could they fight? You guys are too weak. It's been half a day, and you still haven't cleaned up these things. Ling Han sighed. It's easy for you to say that. Why don't you come and try? Yu Kaiyu said grumpily. He and Guang Yuan each had to deal with 7 corpse soldiers, and each of them seemed to have indestructible bodies. Being able to last until now was because of his shocking battle prowess. If he only had around 9 stars, he would definitely have been overwhelmed by now. Ling Han laughed and said, "You really want me to do it?" "Nonsense, hurry up, I'm about to die of exhaustion." Yu Kaiyu urged. He was quite confident in Ling Han's battle prowess. "Let's make a bet. In just 10 breaths, I can kill all these corpse soldiers." Ling Han wasn't in a hurry. Ha! Yu Kaiyu naturally didn't believe him. Although he also hoped that Ling Han could show off his invincible might and solve the predicament of the 3 of them, he could only barely resist. But Ling Han could kill so many corpse soldiers in 10 breaths? That was clearly impossible. What are we betting on? He was a careless person and was very unconvinced. I haven't thought of it yet, but do one thing for me in the future. Ling Han thought for a moment and said, don't worry, it will definitely be within your ability. Alright, then hurry up. If you can really kill these corpse soldiers, I'll even owe you my life. Yu Kaiyu cried out. The 7 corpse soldiers were giving him more and more pressure. Ling Han snickered. His figure moved, and he attacked a corpse soldier. He threw a punch, and black demonic patterns intertwined on his fist. Bang! He clashed head-on with a corpse soldier, and his entire body was immediately sent flying, showing that his strength was actually inferior to that corpse soldier's. However, the strange thing was that the corpse soldier's arm began to soften, as if it had turned into a skeleton, turning into dust under the corrosion of time. Chapter 367. On the 3rd floor of the Divine Temple, in the Golden Temple that was 10 times smaller, 18 chains locked a red-haired monster. It did not move for a long time, as if it was a dead person. However, after an unknown period of time, a red light surged on its body. It was a drop of blood. Originally, the blood-sucking Bug King had pierced its mouth into its heart. As long as a drop of blood was produced, it would be sucked away. However, now that the Bug King was gone, this drop of blood was preserved. A miraculous scene appeared. As the blood flowed, the red-haired monster actually glowed with an astonishing vitality. The hair on its body was also constantly receding, revealing pale skin that stuck tightly to its bones. This was actually a female, but now she was like a dried corpse, without even a strand of hair. One could only say that her appearance was terrifying and frightening. However, after a good while, the second drop of blood was produced, once again flowing through her body. Her vitality was even more abundant, her skin quickly becoming moist and smooth. Her buttocks were also raised high, a head of long red hair growing out, reaching her buttocks, also covering her private parts, leaving behind a hazy scene. This was a great beauty, her red lips like fire, her eyebrows like a painting, full of bewitching allure. Pooh! A pair of black wings unfurled on her back, forming bat wings. There was not a single feather, each piece 3 meters long. She stretched, appearing somewhat lazy, but it made the 2 proud places of her body stand out even more. Ding, ding, dang, 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 the iron chains gave off crisp sounds. She clapped her hands, and said, trapping this lady for 100,000 years, so boring. Without the suppression of the blood-devouring insects, this demon suppression chain can't trap this lady for long. She released her divine perception to sense, suddenly laughed loudly, and said to herself, the Windwing race suppressed this lady, but they were afraid that killing this lady would provoke the powerful figures of my race to eliminate them. They only sealed this lady, and then used the blood-devouring insect king to absorb this lady's blood essence, not giving this lady the chance to escape. I heard that the Windwing race made a contract with the blood-devouring insect king, for the Windwing race to forever worship the blood-devouring insect king in exchange for the blood-devouring insect king suppressing this lady. I didn't expect that the Windwing race had already cut off their worship tens of thousands of years ago. No wonder that insect king was furious. Strange, why does this lady feel that this isn't the ancient land of the Windwing race, but rather like being pushed into some strange space? Don't care so much, the urgent matter is to escape, and then find that human youngster. On his body, this lady seems to sense some amazing treasure. Ling Han and the other 2 continued to run wildly, and only after traveling another few hundred miles did they heave a sigh of relief. Although the swarm of insects was large, it wasn't shocking when placed in such a large world, and the powerful one was only that super insect king. As long as that guy didn't catch up, there was nothing to be afraid of. The 3 stopped to regulate their breathing. The spiritual chi here was too abundant, and they had to cultivate for enough time every day, or else it would be a huge waste. The rock spirit, on the other hand, asked Ling Han for a few stone pillars, and started munching on them. A few hours later, the 3 of them had finished their cultivation, and their realms had improved a little. The harvest this time is really great. Ukiyu took out a jade bottle, which contained spiritual liquid, but they didn't know what it was. They only knew that it was definitely something good, but as for how to use it, they could only stare. Although spiritual liquid was good, it couldn't be eaten indiscriminately. If it exceeded one's own tier by too much, then one's body would explode and die. If one died from eating spiritual medicine, that would be too embarrassing. Ling Han took it and said, "I'll study it for a bit and should know how to use it. Let's eat meat first." He took out the corpse of the tiger-headed crocodile-bodied great beast and started a fire to cook it. This was a king-tier beast of the flower blossom tier. If they ate it whole, it was guaranteed that the three of them would explode and die, unable to digest such benefits at all. Thus, Ling Han only cut off one of its legs. The pot for cooking wasn't a normal iron pot, but a medicinal cauldron used to refine pills. Because extremely high temperatures were needed to cook flower blossom tier beast meat until it was tender, a normal iron pot would have long melted into molten iron. As a matter of fact, Ling Han even used strange fire, completely refining this pot of meat as a medicinal pill. He added a lot of precious medicine from the Black Tower, and quite a few reached 1,000 years old. He also added a few absolute cold ice heart fish. He believed that this pot of nourishment could make spiritual pedestal tier warriors have a nosebleed. Ukiyu and Guang Yuan went to set up a tent, and after they were done, Ling Han summoned Li Si-chan from the Black Tower. This gave Ukiyu a fright, but Ling Han and Guang Yuan both said that Li Si-chan ran over just as they arrived, making him extremely puzzled. When did his senses become so weak that he didn't even know a gushing spring tier warrior ran over? Moreover, wasn't this too much of a coincidence? They fled for their lives and didn't care about the direction at all, so why did Li Si-chan coincidentally also run in this direction? However, after a few cups of wine, he immediately forgot about this matter completely. The four of them began to eat the fish and meat. Li Si-chan only took a small bite, and her whole body emitted multicolored light again. She had no choice but to sit on the side and circulate a cultivation technique to refine the majestic medicinal essence inside her body. A king-tier great beast at the level of the flower blossom tier, what kind of great tonic was this? Even Ukiyu and Guang Yuan only ate a small bowl each and had no choice but to stop, hurriedly going to the side to circulate and refine it. Only Ling Han ate bowl after bowl, as if he had transformed into the glutton who knew, making Ukiyu's eyeballs practically fall out. He was sure that if he ate so much precious meat, he would definitely be stuffed to death. Ling Han savored the delicacy, but sighed inwardly. His spiritual pedestal was too imposing, and there were two of them. The accumulation needed for him to advance a small tier was enough for others to advance a dozen times. This was the price that had to be paid for being invincible in the same tier. Ling Han felt both pain and happiness as he ate madly, and very soon, he finished the whole pot of fish soup. Only then did he begin to circulate the 5 elements heaven-grade skill to refine the medicinal effects. Hong, his whole body emitted divine light, and an intense change also happened inside his body. The indestructible heaven scroll circulated, and was currently upgrading his physique from the iron sheet tier to the diamond tier, but this step required too much of the essence of the precious medicine, and it definitely couldn't be accomplished in a short period of time. The awkward thing was that the indestructible heaven scroll extracted most of the essence of the precious medicine, leaving him pitifully little to use to increase his cultivation. He wanted to increase his cultivation first, but what could he do? The 5 elements heaven-grade skill couldn't compete with the indestructible heaven scroll, leaving him helpless. Forget it, having a strong physique was naturally a good thing. Moreover, even if he reached the diamond tier, he would only be able to complete the first layer of the indestructible heaven scroll, and Ling Han still didn't know how many layers this cultivation technique had, because he didn't understand the following cultivation techniques at all. It should be because his cultivation level was too low. Ling Han entered the tent, pretending to rest for a while, but actually entered into the Black Tower. He wanted to study that spiritual liquid. Chapter 368. The Thunder Battle armor was passed down from ancient times, and the ancestor of the Ao clan wanted to give it to his descendant. Even if it couldn't activate the might of the spirit tool, the material itself was enough to form an indestructible defense, protecting the vital parts of the user's body. Thus, he pushed for it and insisted on using this battle armor as a reward. Thus, he also paid a price. After all, everyone knew that this battle armor would definitely fall into the hands of the 7 sons of the Ao clan. But now, he suffered a double loss. More importantly, Ling Han actually activated the Thunder battle armor. This was really too miraculous, and it was guaranteed that no one in the Winter Moon sect would believe it. Ling Han, relying on the might of the Thunder battle armor, actually managed to pin down 2 spiritual pedestal tier warriors by himself. This was firstly because the Thunder battle armor was indeed awesome, and secondly because the Thousand Corpse sect, whether it was disciples or corpse soldiers, were all extremely evil, and were completely suppressed by lightning. Thus, there was such a glorious battle result. If word of this got out, it would scare people to death. A brat in the first layer of the spiritual ocean tier actually stood against 2 spiritual pedestal tier warriors. Yu Kaiyu and Guang Yuan were already in a state of stupor, and the other people of the Thousand Corpse sect were more or less in the same state, shocked by Ling Han's nature-defying battle prowess. "Hang, it's just a spirit tool. Do you really think I can't do anything to you?" Duan Zhengji humphed coldly. With a shake of his right hand, a long saber appeared. Obviously, there was a spatial ring. This long saber was a spirit tool, and there were multiple patterns on its body that were soon lit up. There were a total of 13 patterns, and they all exuded a dim light. The entire saber seemed to be wrapped in black fog. He swung the saber in a quick slash. Woo, 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 there was actually a ghostly wail coming from the saber. The sound seemed to be able to eat brains, making one feel extremely uncomfortable. Ah! Yu Kaiyu and Guang Yuan immediately covered their ears with their hands, but blood still gushed out from their eyes, nose, and mouth. Blood also seeped out from the gaps between their fingers, and it was obvious that their ears were also bleeding. Demonic sound eats the brain, 7 apertures kill. Duan Zhengji said with a cold smile. The power of this spirit tool did not lie in its sharpness, but in its ability to emit demonic sounds. Only those who had cultivated corpse chi would be immune to it. In the past, the Thousand Corpse sect had 3 precious treasures: the 3 lives corpse casket, the demonic noise saber, and the pond of the underworld. This spirit tool was a replica of the demonic noise saber. It was only a 5th grade spirit tool, but it was naturally more than enough to deal with a few spiritual ocean tier elites. Ling Han was still fine. The Thunder battle armor formed a barrier. This was a level 10 spirit tool, and even though it was damaged, the barrier it formed still possessed astonishing defensive capabilities. It blocked the demonic sound. However, this was also rapidly depleting Ling Han's origin energy. In order to activate the Thunder battle armor, he needed to constantly input origin energy. After all, without a weapon spirit, he could only rely on his own strength to activate the spirit weapon. The best way was, of course, to capture the ringleader. As long as he captured Duan Zhengji, the demonic sound would naturally disappear. The problem was, he was in the spiritual pedestal tier, so how was he supposed to take him down? Ling Han immediately leaped and arrived beside Yu Kaiyu and Guang Yuan. He suddenly moved, and with 2 paw sounds, the 2 of them were knocked unconscious. How could the 2 of them have imagined that Ling Han would suddenly attack them? They were really not on guard at all, and added with the fact that Ling Han was indeed very strong, he was able to succeed in a single strike. Duan Zhengji was also startled. What did this mean? Could it be that Ling Han was going to surrender? These 2 people were surrendering to him. He would be stunned, but the corpse soldiers would not. Nong Qingyu immediately charged over with a shrill scream. "I won't play with you anymore. Great Spirit have an instant movement talisman, let's go." Ling Han grabbed Yu Kaiyu and Guang Yuan with one hand, while his other hand randomly took out a piece of paper and stuck it on his body. Xiao, his figure immediately disappeared. He naturally entered into the Black Tower, but how could Duan Zhengji have imagined that there would be such a treasure in this world? Moreover, his first impression was the strongest, and when he heard that Great Spirit Heaven Instant Movement Talisman, he thought that Ling Han had really used a spirit talisman to teleport away. Instantly, he roared in fury. "Milord, what do we do?" The others all stepped forward. Pa Duan Jingji gave each of them a slap, and angrily scolded, "A bunch of trash, unable to even take down 3 people." Everyone could not help but ridicule him internally. "Aren't you the same?" But these words could only be said in their minds, and they did not dare to show the slightest bit of it on their faces. They all knelt on the ground, and said, "Milord, please calm your anger." After Duan Jingji vented his temper for a while, he said, "Retreat. Everyone leave the city before dawn, and abandon this stronghold." "Milord, but Elder Nine Clouds will come to inspect 3 days later," a disciple said. "Hang, we've already been exposed here. Latest by noon tomorrow, the Winter Moon sect will definitely send an elite over." Duan Jingji waved his hand. Elder Nine Clouds is only in the Flower Blossom tier, but the Winter Moon sect has an elite of the Spiritual Infant tier. If Elder Nine Clouds falls into the hands of the Winter Moon sect, which one of you will be able to bear the responsibility? Yes. Everyone nodded one after another, and immediately dispersed to wake up the others and leave with the corpse soldiers. They still had to destroy this underground chamber. "Guang Yuan, oh, Guang Yuan, we really are enemies. In the past, you fought with me over women, and now you're forcing me to give up on the foundation that I've managed for many years. Don't let me meet you again, or else I'll definitely skin you alive and refine you into a skinless corpse soldier." Duan Zhengji said harshly, and with a flick of his sleeves, he left. Ling Han naturally saw everything clearly from within the Black Tower. He was in no hurry to leave either. The Thousand Corpse sect was going to retreat anyway, so it wouldn't be too late for him to leave calmly after they'd all left. Moreover, even if he immediately rushed back to the Winter Moon sect now, he wouldn't be able to invite an elite to carry out an encirclement. The Thousand Corpse sect, they really were quite a spooky bunch, running into him everywhere. Since he had nothing to do, he might as well cultivate for a while. Ling Han threw Guang Yuan and Yu Kaiyu to one side. He didn't plan on waking them up, he'd do it after he left. With a casual wave of his hand, an origin crystal floated out, and with a thought from him, it shattered with a paw instantly. An extremely rich origin power enveloped him, and he channeled his spirit base to absorb it. In just a few breaths, the origin power that was so rich that it was almost solid was completely absorbed by him. Fuck! Ling Han was shocked. He hadn't cultivated properly for the past 2 days, and today was the first time he used an origin crystal, which gave him a great shock. A single-star origin crystal required a spiritual ocean tier elite to continuously pour in origin power for a month before it could be refined. It could be imagined just how powerful the origin power contained within it was. However, Ling Han only casually absorbed it a few times, and this origin crystal was gone. My spiritual ocean is a bit too big, and there's even 2 of them. Ling Han sighed. His power far surpassed the average spiritual ocean tier, which also meant that if he wanted to increase his cultivation, the amount of spiritual chi he needed would far surpass that of an average person. With every gain, there must be a price to pay. However, to be invincible among those of the same cultivation level, I'll just absorb more spiritual chi. Anyways, origin crystals are easy to get. Ling Han flipped his hand again, and this time, he took out 100 origin crystals. They shattered at the same time, and origin power instantly surged like an ocean, flowing around his body. Chapter 369. The biggest advantage of using origin crystals to cultivate was that there was no time limit. Martial artists absorbed spiritual chi and converted it into origin crystals, which required the consumption of divine sense to activate the spirit base and achieve the effect of absorbing spiritual chi. If one used origin crystals to cultivate, they could skip the step of converting spiritual chi into origin power, greatly saving divine sense. So, this time could be extended by at least 2 or 3 times, almost able to cultivate for an entire day, and then sleep. When they woke up, their divine sense would naturally recover, and they could continue cultivating. This was also why disciples of large sects advanced so quickly. They not only had large amounts of spirit medicine to break through the shackles of Tyr, but also endless origin crystals to speed up the accumulation of origin power. In only half an hour, 100 origin crystals were completely refined. Ling Han hissed. He was already so fierce now, and when he reached the flower blossom tier and the deity transformation tier, wouldn't his body become a bottomless pit? How many origin crystals would he need to ensure that his cultivation speed wouldn't drop? Fortunately, I have the Black Tower with its own medicinal garden, speeding up the growth of spirit herbs. Otherwise, where would I get so many high-quality origin crystals? 1-star origin crystal was almost useless for the spiritual pedestal tier, and to reach the deity transformation tier, one would need at least 5-star origin crystals to speed up cultivation. In his last life, he wasn't so freakish, so the medicinal pills he concocted along with some origin crystals could support his flying cultivation speed, but now, he continued to cultivate. Piles of origin crystals shattered, and origin power was absorbed by him, increasing his cultivation. However, I don't have any bottlenecks in cultivation now. As long as there's a huge supply of origin crystals, tier advancement is still very fast. Ling Han smiled slightly. In about another 10 days, he would be able to advance into the second layer of the spiritual ocean tier. After another few hours, there was a rumbling sound, and the entire basement was flattened. This meant that the people of the Duan residence had finished all the evacuation work. Time to leave. Ling Han's figure flashed out of the Black Tower. Immediately, he felt pressure because he was buried in a pile of ruins. He was already prepared, and the Thunder Battle Armor activated, releasing a terrifying power of lightning. Pa, the surrounding bricks were instantly shattered, and a space was forcibly blasted out. He walked calmly, the Thunder Battle Armor constantly releasing electricity. He easily walked out of the ruins and arrived on the ground. At this moment, the entire Duan residence was in a complete mess. There was a raging fire, and many people from outside the residence came to put out the fire. Ling Han used his movement technique and quickly left. In a remote alley, he summoned Yu Kaiyu and Guang Yuan from the Black Tower, then shot out a pillar of water, spraying it on the two of them. The two of them jumped up at the same time, assuming a defensive stance. However, they immediately revealed confused expressions, because their memories were still stuck at the time when they had been attacked by Duan Jingji and Nong Qingyu. Why are we here? Hiss, my head hurts a little. I remember now, it was you who knocked me out. Yu Kaiyu stared at Ling Han. Ling Han hurriedly shook his head, and righteously said, "Your eyes must be blurred. How could I hit you? I used a great universal teleportation talisman to bring us out of the Duan residence. You guys couldn't bear the powerful force of teleportation, so you fainted." This made Yu Kaiyu and Guang Yuan dumbfounded. Neither of them had used the teleportation talisman, so they naturally didn't know what side effects it had. They were suspicious, but there didn't seem to be any basis. "Time to return," Ling Han said. Yu Kaiyu hurriedly said, "We should return to the sect first and report the news of the Thousand Corpse sect to Junior Brother Han. We discovered the Thousand Corpse sect stronghold here, and this is a great merit. I'll ask the old ancestor to speak for you, and he'll definitely cancel your punishment, so you don't have to go to the Dark Demon Forest anymore." Ling Han only smiled, and said, "No matter, I just wanted to go out for a walk. You return to the sect and report the news. I'll take them to the Dark Demon Forest for a walk." He already found out about his mother's whereabouts, so he couldn't rescue Yu Hongchang in a short time. It was better to find the remaining two main ingredients for Ling Dongxing first. Thus, although this trip to the Winter Moon sect wasn't very satisfactory, he basically achieved his goal. Yu Kaiyu nodded. The Thousand Corpse sect appearing in Sea Breeze City was practically right under the Winter Moon sect's nose. This was a big matter, and the sect had to be notified immediately. After he left, Ling Han and Guang Yuan also returned to the inn. Guang Yuan's expression was very ugly. The goddess of the past was actually refined into a corpse soldier, which made him hate Duan Jingji to the bone. If you want revenge, first increase your strength, Ling Han said calmly. With your current abilities, you would not be able to exact your revenge at all. You would only be delivering yourself to Duan Jingji. I won't help you, so you have to take revenge yourself. Guang Yuan clenched his fists, revealing a strong fighting spirit. Very well, in terms of cultivation resources, I will completely satisfy you, but whether you can cross the threshold of the spiritual pedestal tier, whether you can catch up to Duan Jingji in the future, will still depend on your own efforts, Ling Han said calmly. Guang Yuan nodded. To take revenge for the woman he loved, he didn't want to leave it to others. Previously, I indeed knocked you guys unconscious, Ling Han suddenly said. I have a spirit tool that's similar to a spatial ring, but can store living things. Just now, it was because I put you guys inside that I was able to escape from Duan Jingji's hands. He hid it from Yukayu because this guy couldn't keep secrets when he was drunk, so how could he tell him? Guang Yuan was shocked. He'd never heard of a spirit tool that could store living things. However, due to its level, he didn't know how precious such a treasure was, and was only shocked for a moment. I'll put you inside now, and you can use the origin crystals inside. First, use the Restore Origin pill to strengthen your foundation, then break through. Otherwise, in a battle of the same tier, how could you possibly win against the combined forces of Duan Jingji and a corpse soldier? What's more, the opponent has an impressive spirit tool, Ling Han continued. All right. Guang Yuan nodded. Don't put up any resistance, I'll put you inside. Ling Han pressed a hand on Guang Yuan's body, and with a thought show, Guang Yuan disappeared on the spot, naturally entering into the Black Tower. Ling Han strode back to the inn. Ling Han. Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan immediately came to greet him, while Hunyo directly threw herself into his arms. At this time, Yu Kaiyu wasn't here, so the two girls naturally called Ling Han by his real name. Ling Han nodded, and said, let's go, we should leave. He called Kan Yi and Zhu Wujiu over, and after a simple explanation, Ling Han put everyone into the Black Tower, letting them cultivate inside. Meanwhile, he left Sea Breeze City, hired a carriage, and headed towards the Extreme Yang City. The Extreme Yang City could be said to be the center of the whole North region, possessing extremely developed commerce. This was where the headquarters of the Alchemist Society in the North region resided, and it was also the headquarters of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion in the North region, possessing the rich resources of the whole North region. It could be said that all precious items would first appear in the Extreme Yang City, converge, and then be transported to every corner of the North region. Here, he should be able to obtain the remaining two main ingredients needed to concoct the Restore Spirit pill. Chapter 370. The carriage swayed. This trip to Extreme Yang City would take almost a month's journey, and this was on top of the red-eyed horned beast hired by Ling Han, which was said to be able to travel 10,000 miles in a day. Otherwise, if it was a carriage pulled by a normal beast, then 3 or 4 months would be too long. The carriage was pulled very steadily. There was indeed some shaking inside, but it was not very strong. Moreover, Ling Han would spend most of his time inside the Black Tower, so whether the carriage was bumpy or not was actually not much of an effect. Guang Yuan turned his fury into motivation, and added with the fact that his own natural talent was quite extraordinary. Now that he had obtained Ling Han's limitless supply of resources, it was as if his cultivation had grown wings, and he already had 1 foot in the spiritual pedestal tier. Kan Yi also began to break through to the spiritual ocean tier, while Lu Yutong and Zhu Wujiu hadn't encountered the barrier of a major tier, and were advancing at high speed on the path of the gushing spring tier. In comparison, Li Si-chan's advancement was much slower. However, the majority of her talent lay in alchemy, which Ling Han was very satisfied with. He carefully guided her in alchemy. As for cultivation level, he could just directly use alchemical pills to raise it. As long as it didn't hinder the advancement of alchemy, it was fine. The most shocking was of course Hunyo. After arriving at the 9th layer of the gushing spring tier, she charged into the spiritual ocean tier without any delay. Whatever barrier of a major tier, whatever unstable foundation, was not a problem for her. It was as if she was born to be the strongest existence, so there was no barrier of a major tier. Her foundation was already firmly established with every step she took, and there was no need to further consolidate it. Most importantly, no matter what she ate, she could perfectly transform it into her own origin power. Thus, she was improving at every moment. Ling Han had fought with Hunyo before, and under normal battle prowess, he was actually not the little girl's match. He had to use a mystical power like the Eye of Truth to catch the little girl's movements, and even then, it was only a tie. The little girl's speed was really extremely sharp, making Ling Han unable to show his might even though he had the power. A few days later, they had already left the territory of the Winter Moon sect, and were heading towards Extreme Yang City. Hualu, the carriage suddenly stopped. Ling Han happened to be in the carriage when he heard the coachman shout, "This is the Sun Enterprises convoy, who dares to rob us?" "Humph, have the person inside come out." A cold snort rang out. Ling Han frowned. This was Duan Jingji. He opened the door of the carriage, and as expected, he saw Duan Jingji standing 10 meters away from the carriage. He wore a large felt hat on his head, blocking out the sunlight. The members of the Thousand Corpse sect cultivated corpse chi, and though they were not afraid of sunlight, it was extremely detestable. This guy actually chased me all the way here. Ling Han jumped down from the carriage and said, "You go first and wait for me 10 miles ahead. If I don't get there in an hour, then don't wait for me." When the coachman heard Ling Han say so, he was naturally happy and relaxed. Normally speaking, they were responsible for the safety of their employer. Duan Jingji did not stop them. His target was Ling Han. As for the two carriage drivers, it did not matter whether they were killed or not. "You're quite considerate. You clearly know that there are elites of the Winter Moon sect searching for me, yet you still dared to search for me in the city, and you even found me." Ling Han shook his head, appearing slightly surprised. Duan Jingji sneered, and said, "If I don't cut off your head, how would I have the face to see Elder Nine Clouds?" Ling Han cracked a smile, and said, "You're so confident that you can take me down? If you didn't have the instant teleportation talisman, would you be able to escape from me?" Duan Jingji sneered. "I don't believe that you still have such a precious thing, then I'm afraid you'll be disappointed," Ling Han said with a smile, and directly entered the Black Tower. Unless he used the power boost from the Black Tower, he would definitely not be able to kill someone in the middle stage of the spiritual pedestal tier with his current cultivation of the first layer of the spiritual ocean tier. The main reason was that the difference in power was too great. When the difference in power reached a certain level, it would form a crushing effect. As the saying went, one power could break all techniques, no technique could make up for it. Moreover, he still had to hand Duan Jingji over to Guang Yuan to kill. If Guang Yuan didn't personally avenge such a great enmity, then Guang Yuan wouldn't be able to rest in peace even after 100 years. Duan Jingji was greatly shocked. He had never imagined that Ling Han actually had an instant teleportation talisman. One had to know that this kind of thing was really too precious. It was a divine item that could save one's life, and it had long been lost in the ancient times. Not only did Ling Han have it, he had more than one, which made him completely dumbfounded. "Hang, this brat has been tainted by the yin qi of the Great Tomb, and within half a year, he won't be able to hide from my nose. I'll definitely find him again and kill him," he said in his heart. Ling Han cultivated in the Black Tower for a while, then left in a flash. Hunyo also ran out, the little girl was going to stick to him again. Ling Han held her little hand and walked forwards. Indeed, 10 miles away, that carriage was waiting for him. When the two coachmen saw that Ling Han actually appeared with a little girl, they couldn't help but be extremely shocked. Who would encounter such a thing? Encountering an enemy on the way, and in the end, when he reappeared, there was an additional little girl who was as pretty as a statue carved out of jade. Ling Han naturally did not pay attention to their confusion, and had no intention of explaining. He boarded the carriage with Hun Yo, and continued to advance. But after a mere day, Duan Jingji caught up to them again. Ling Han used the same trick and entered the Black Tower. At first, he thought it was because of the carriage, so this time, he directly let the carriage return. He could just hire a new one, all right? But after a mere day, he was once again stopped by Duan Jingji. He shook off Duan Jingji for the third time, and even changed his appearance again inside the Black Tower. He hired a third carriage, but after a single day, he was found by Duan Jingji for the fourth time. Ha, ha, so you are also proficient in the art of disguise. Duan Jingji laughed coldly. Ling Han rubbed his chin, and said, then in that case, you should have some special method to be able to discover me from a very far distance, and not because you're clever and found me through some clues. Take your time to guess. Duan Jingji naturally would not reveal his secret. Who knew how many instant teleportation talismans Ling Han still had on him? According to the old rules, I should leave now. No need to send me off. Ling Han did not waste any time, and immediately entered the Black Tower. Duan Jingji was astonished. How many instant teleportation talismans did this guy have on him? Why was there no end to them? He leaped, and began to search for Ling Han all over the mountains and plains. After entering into the Black Tower, Ling Han immediately used the power of the Black Tower to scan his own body, searching for any martial intent that had been planted on him by someone, which was why Duan Jingji was always able to find him. But the result was that he was very normal. He could not help but feel strange. What was going on? Guang Yuan is about to break through. At that time, I'll throw Duan Jingji to him. Ling Han thought for a moment, and made a decision. He was too lazy to leave the Black Tower, so he continued to cultivate inside. Another 3 days later, he broke through to the second layer of the spiritual ocean tier, and 2 pieces of good news came respectively. Guang Yuan broke through to the spiritual pedestal tier, while Kan Yi broke through to the spiritual ocean tier. Chapter 371. Ling Han attacked again. Ding, 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 the two fought fiercely. Fortunately, the second swordsman lost a leg and an arm, greatly reducing his battle prowess, and Ling Han finally gained the upper hand. However, he still fought another 1,000 moves before finally suppressing his opponent. He immediately sat down on the ground, feeling so tired that he wanted to sleep. Logically speaking, he was a spiritual body, so he shouldn't feel tired. This should be because his spirit was exhausted too much, causing him to feel extremely tired. You can rest for 10 minutes. The formation spirit appeared, and with a wave of its hand, all the wounds on Ling Han's body disappeared. Ling Han sat cross-legged. There was no meaning in adjusting his breath here, he wasn't a physical body at all. He stretched out his left hand and operated it, and couldn't help but reveal a hint of joy, because the formation spirit also simulated the demonic pattern on his hand. This came from Azura Demon Emperor, which should be a god-tier existence. Its destructive power was also extremely terrifying, and it was at least 20 stars of the spiritual infant tier. Ling Han's thoughts turned, and he said, this time, I want to fight 20 stars of the spiritual infant tier. In another testing space, the enemy Rong Huanxian faced was impressively a flower blossom tier existence. He cackled strangely, and said, corpse and I are one, split. A strange scene appeared. His lower abdomen split open, and a corpse soldier actually pierced out. It was shockingly a third-tier silver-armored corpse, comparable to a flower blossom tier. If it weren't for the fact that my tier is too low and I'm unable to fuse with a spiritual infant tier corpse soldier, I could even choose a spiritual infant tier opponent. Rong Huanxian's face was filled with pride. However, this is enough. I'm only a 3 stars of the spiritual pedestal tier, yet I can defeat a 5 stars of the flower blossom tier. This surpassing star value is something that no one can compare to. He pointed at the flower blossom tier opponent and ordered the corpse soldier, kill him for me. On! The corpse soldier immediately charged forward. In another space, Yan Tianzhao impressively appeared. He had been hiding in the shadows and didn't appear, not because he was afraid of Ling Han, but because he wanted to ambush Ling Han and succeed in one strike, seizing the key from his hands. And his opponent was shockingly also a flower blossom tier existence. This is a spiritual space. I have fused with the memories of immortals, and in terms of the strength of my divine sense, it surpasses that of anyone, he said proudly. My true battle prowess is only in the spiritual pedestal tier, but here, it is the limit of the flower blossom tier. This is a mystery realm set up by the 12 generals of the Heavenly River King. According to the legends, the Heavenly River King obtained a supreme inheritance, and practically ruled over the great Brahma heaven. Though he was ultimately destroyed, his reputation was illustrious. Even his 12 subordinates are ridiculously strong. I am determined to obtain the inheritance of the Heavenly River King, but that will only be possible after returning to the great Brahma heaven. Now, I will first obtain the inheritance of the 12 generals. I believe that it will also be very beneficial to the improvement of my abilities. Hong, his opponent, had already arrived in an imposing manner. It was shockingly a terrifying existence of 20 stars of the flower blossom tier. 20 stars of the battle god pedestal tier, this should be Ling Han's limit. He might still be able to win if he had one more star, but what meaning was there in having one more star? Thus, he wanted to play big. 20 stars of the spiritual infant tier. His destructive power was enough to defeat such an elite, but the key was that he didn't know how these swordsmen appeared the previous 2 times. Thus, he had long since laid in ambush at the place where the third swordsman would appear, the black pattern already ready to strike. As you wish. The formation spirit immediately disappeared after saying this, and the third swordsman had already appeared. He was also extremely strong, and discovered that Ling Han was lying in ambush for him. Though there was already no time to brandish his sword, he directly unleashed a divine sense attack, blasting towards Ling Han. How fast was the divine sense attack? Furthermore, with the divine sense of a spiritual infant tier cultivator, a light touch could crush a spiritual pedestal tier cultivator to death a few hundred times. But who was Ling Han? He had a sliver of heaven tier divine sense, and wanting to injure him with divine sense, one had to at least be in the heaven tier, right? Hong, under the divine sense attack, Ling Han was unscathed, but his left hand slapped onto the third swordsman's body. The demonic pattern shone, and the third swordsman disappeared as soon as he appeared. It was settled just like that. The formation spirit appeared again, and it was obviously speechless. In this battle, Ling Han used too many tricks, and it definitely wasn't the embodiment of true battle prowess. But who asked it to copy such an ability from Ling Han, and Ling Han caught onto a loophole? On the other hand, if it wasn't for Ling Han's powerful divine sense, he definitely would have been directly shocked to death by that attack, and there wouldn't be any tricks afterwards. You pass, the formation spirit said somewhat gloomily. Because it just encountered a monster, there was a little girl, and it actually couldn't pull out her divine sense, causing her to be unable to participate in the test. I still can't go out? Ling Han asked. When everyone else finishes, the top 3 will be rewarded right here, the formation spirit said. Ling Han nodded and waited patiently. This wait actually lasted for a day and a night. Originally, as long as one came here on this day, they could participate in the test, but after this day ended, the entire test was also declared over, and the top 3 would be judged according to everyone's results. Show, all those who didn't enter the top 3 had their divine sense return, and were all shaken out of the room. What, I can surpass 7 stars to defeat an opponent, but I actually didn't enter the top 3, get lost, I surpassed 8 stars. Everyone cried out in shock. They were already so strong, but they actually didn't even enter the top 3, this was too exaggerated, wasn't it? Yu Kunlun, Yang Junhao, and the other first place on the prodigy roll all had ugly expressions. They could even surpass 10 stars to battle, but still couldn't advance into the top 3, this was too big of a blow. Ao Feng and the other middle-aged generation also had gloomy expressions. Similarly surpassing 5 stars to battle, the the flower blossom tier was at least comparable to the spiritual pedestal tier's 10 stars, because the higher the tier, the harder it was to surpass one's tier to battle. Could it be that the formation spirit didn't consider this? They all did. Previously, there were 15 flower blossom tier warriors here, and now there were still 15, which meant that not a single flower blossom tier warrior entered the top 3. This made them feel unfair. The formation spirit definitely didn't consider the difficulty of the tier. I don't accept it. I don't accept it either. We all don't accept it. Everyone shouted one after another, wanting the formation spirit to give an explanation. The formation spirit appeared, and said, "You guys are doubting my fairness. Lord Formation Spirit, have you considered the difficulty of surpassing Flower Blossom Tier's tier to battle?" Ao Feng asked courteously. The formation spirit that transformed into a young child sneered, and said, "This lord has lived a few thousand times longer than you, and actually dares to ask this lord such a question." Then, Lord Formation Spirit, say, "How many stars did the top 3 surpass?" Someone said, unconvinced. "That's right, tell us. I'd like to know how powerful the top 3 are." The formation spirit paused slightly, and said, "All right, 3rd place, spiritual pedestal tier, defeated a 5th layer flower blossom tier." Pooh! Instantly, many people spurted out, revealing expressions of disbelief. Who didn't know the gap between the spiritual pedestal tier and the flower blossom tier? This was an insurmountable chasm, but a spiritual pedestal tier actually defeated a flower blossom tier, and at the 5th layer flower blossom tier at that. Wasn't this a huge joke? Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 372. Everyone was very excited. Though they had not personally experienced it, when they heard Ling Han say that he had been pursued by Duan Jingji these past few days, all of them were filled with pent-up anger. Now that the boiling blood pill had been concocted, they could finally wave the flag of their counterattack. Ling Han left the city and headed south, but he had only walked for about 100 miles when Duan Jingji appeared like a maggot attached to a bone. "Brat, where are you running to this time?" Duan Jingji smirked coldly. Previously, Ling Han had not used an instant movement talisman, but had instead risked his speed to escape into the city. What did this mean? Ling Han had already run out of instant movement talismans, or rather, he only had 1 or 2 left, and had to save them to save his life. "However, I do have some admiration for you. You obviously don't have any means to save your life, yet you still dare to leave the city alone," he continued. He was trying to get information from Ling Han, wanting to know if he still had any instant movement talismans in his possession. Ling Han smiled calmly, and said, "Who said I left the city alone? Oh, could it be that you invited an elite?" Duan Jingji was slightly shocked. There was indeed no such idiot in this world. Knowing that he was being pursued by an elite of spiritual pedestal tier, he would still casually and deliberately leave the city to die. However, when he spread out his divine sense, he did not discover anyone lying in ambush nearby. In reality, he had kept an eye on Ling Han for a long time before revealing himself. Firstly, he had gone far enough, so Ling Han could not possibly escape back into the city. Secondly, he was sure that there was no elite protecting Ling Han from behind. Without full confidence, how could he possibly reveal himself? Ling Han smiled and raised his right hand lightly. Xiao, Hunyou's figure appeared, and she immediately opened her small arms to hug him, looking very clingy. Duan Jingji's mouth instantly fell open, and his eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. How was this possible? A living person appeared out of thin air. Could it be that this little girl had used an instant movement talisman to appear? But was there such an instant movement talisman in this world that could actually appear at such an accurate location? Duan Jingji suddenly had a bad premonition. When a person encountered something that was beyond their understanding, they would definitely feel a sense of helplessness. "No, beat him up." Ling Han laughed. "And," Hunyou answered in a crisp voice. Her small figure darted out, and Xiao, like a flash of lightning, she instantly appeared behind Duan Jingji. She raised her small fist and delivered a punch towards the back of Duan Jingji's head. Her speed was too fast, so fast that Duan Jingji did not have time to dodge or parry. He could only use his origin energy to protect his head and circulate his will of martial art, forming a protective screen. With the power of the spiritual ocean tier and the power of the spiritual pedestal tier, the only result was that Hunyo's fist would be shattered. But was Hunyo that easy to deal with? Her small fist unbelievably bent and smashed downwards. Pang! It hit Duan Jingji right in the middle of his back. This punch caused Duan Jingji to stumble, and he almost fell to the ground. Hunyo's attack succeeded, and she immediately displayed her beast-like attacking style. Pang, 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 her small fist swung continuously attacking Duan Jingji's weak points. Duan Jingji was dumbstruck. He could only spread out his origin energy regardless of the cost and protect his entire body within it. It was as if he had become a porcupine, and there was absolutely no place for him to attack. Only then did Hunyo stop, and with a show, she leaped back to Ling Han's side, sticking to his body and acting coquettishly. The current Hunyo was completely harmless, and looked more like an exquisite and beautiful little princess. Who would have thought that her attack just now would be so wild and sharp? Duan Jingji suddenly felt a strong sense of fear, because protecting his entire body with origin energy like this consumed a lot of energy. At most, he would only need about an hour before he would have no energy left to continue. And Hunyo only had to wait until he appeared to have insufficient origin energy to attack, and then the consequences would be unthinkable. Thankfully, he still had a powerful weapon. Duan Jingji drew out an imitation of the demonic noise saber. This was a level 5 spirit tool, and furthermore, it was an omnidirectional sound wave attack. Hunyo's spiritual ocean tier cultivation was a great weakness, and with the demonic noise penetrating her brain, she could only be slaughtered by him. Hung, you two are indeed a bit strange, but in front of absolute power, you two still only have one path, death, he said coldly. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, "You don't know how pathetic you looked just now, ugly guy," Hunyo said very proudly. "How dare you?" Duan Jingji waved the demonic noise saber, and immediately, a sound wave attack surged, sweeping towards Ling Han and Hunyo. "Big brother Guang, it's time for you to appear." Ling Han waved his hand, and Guang Yuan's figure instantly appeared. This guy clenched his fist, and Hong, for flashes of fist chi swept out, forming a total of 5 silver-colored dragons and elephants that met the demonic noise head-on. Pang, 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 the 5 dragons and elephants were instantly shattered, but the demonic noise did not dissipate, and cut many wounds on Guang Yuan's body before it was finally destroyed. As expected of an imitation of a level 10 spirit tool, it was far stronger than a normal level 5 spirit tool. Yet Duan Jingji's face was filled with shock, and he said, "You actually broke through to the spiritual pedestal tier." "No, how could you suddenly appear here?" If one person used an instant movement talisman to appear here, it could still be said to be a coincidence, but how could 2 people use such a thing? Moreover, was there such a waste of an instant movement talisman? He suddenly came to a realization and said, "A spatial spirit tool that can contain living things. Brat, you have a precious treasure on you." He revealed a fanatical expression. This was too shocking, because it was equivalent to bringing along a large army with him. Just imagine, if one person snuck into a large force, released a large number of elites from the spatial spirit tool, and then launched a surprise attack, how shocking would the results of the battle be? Especially for the Thousand Corpse sect, what this force needed the most was a place to hide and develop in secret. If one could obtain such a divine item, then who else in this world would be able to find the location of the Thousand Corpse sect? Ha ha ha, even the heavens are helping me. He laughed loudly. If he could bring back this divine item, then the fault of the Sea Breeze City branch naturally need not be mentioned. He would receive great rewards, and it would not be impossible for him to directly be conferred the position of Vice Sect Master. In your dreams. Ling Han naturally knew what the other party was thinking. He shook his head, and said, "Big brother Guang, kill him." "All right." Guang Yuan spread his hands, and swallowed a vermilion-red alchemical pill. It was naturally the boiling blood pill. So what if you have advanced into the spiritual pedestal tier? You have just broken through, and you are only in the first layer of cultivation, while I am in the third layer. Furthermore, with the demonic noise saber in hand, killing you is as easy as killing a chicken, Duan Jingji said disdainfully. He did not want to drag things out, so he immediately took the initiative to attack. With a flying saber strike, the demonic noise was extravagant, piercing through the brain and splitting the heart. Guang Yuan also let out a furious roar. Hong, a terrifying aura surged out from his body, and actually formed multiple whirlwinds around his body. The will of martial art shone within them. Pang, he punched out again. It was the same 4 flashes of fist chi, which also turned into 5 dragon elephants. However, these 5 dragon elephants were at least 10 times larger than the 5 from before. Each of them was 30 meters tall, and shone with a silver light. Chapter 373. Pang, 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 pang. The dragons and elephants crushed down, and the demonic sounds were all annihilated. Previously, the demonic sound had easily shattered the dragon elephant, and had even caused harm to Guang Yuan. However, the tables had turned now. The dragon elephant had crushed the demonic sound, and was charging towards Duan Jingji with great momentum. Duan Jingji could not help but turn pale with fright. How was this possible? Guang Yuan's abilities had actually risen to a level that he could only look up to in an instant. Was this the 7th or 8th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier? How could he be so strong? The higher one's cultivation level was, the more one could not afford to be a difference of 1 or 2 layers. Duan Jingji was only in the 3rd layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, and even if he had a level 5 spirit tool, his cultivation level of the 7th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier would be enough to suppress him. After all, he wasn't a genius who could fight above his level. He was only able to do so because of the demonic noise blade replica. Go to hell and slowly ponder. Guang Yuan charged out. He didn't have much time, and by then, not only would his cultivation return to its original state, it would even fall to the 1st layer of the spiritual ocean tier. Duan Jingji barely managed to parry the attacks, but he was bombarded by Guang Yuan until he vomited blood repeatedly. In the face of absolute power, his counterattack seemed so weak. Creak! He suddenly let out a strange cry. In just a moment, he saw a coffin slide out from the dense forest, as if it had grown legs. Pang! There was a heavy sound, and a corpse soldier also broke out of the coffin. It was known Qingyu. Qingyue. Guang Yuan couldn't help but exclaim. You must be very happy to see your old lover. Duan Jingji laughed coldly. Do you have the heart to kill your old lover? Shua, 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 corpse soldiers did not have emotions to speak of. They immediately launched a fierce attack on Guang Yuan, waving their bone claws. There was black corpse chi surging. If one was touched, especially if one saw blood, the corpse chi would enter one's body, and it had to be expelled immediately. Otherwise, the corpse chi would invade one's body, and one would also become a corpse soldier. It was very scary. Guang Yuan could not bear to lay his hands on the remains of his old lover, so he could only keep dodging. However, this gave Duan Jingji the opportunity to attack wildly. The demonic sound reverberated, and blood splattered continuously from Guang Yuan's body. Ling Han didn't say anything. If Guang Yuan couldn't figure it out and insisted on doing so, it was his business. He had already created an opportunity for Guang Yuan to take revenge, but the other party did not seize it, so he would not give them another opportunity in the future. I know that you have your current battle prowess because you have taken alchemical pills. The problem is, how long can the effects of the alchemical pills last? Duan Jingji laughed coldly. He had regained the upper hand again. Guang Yuan didn't reply. He only stared at Nong Qingyu in a daze. Although this was a corpse soldier, it was maintained rather well, as if it was sleeping soundly. Rip! Rip! His clothes were torn to shreds, revealing numerous wounds. Black corpse chi overflowed from the wounds like poisonous snakes, wanting to drill into his wounds. Obediently allow the corpse chi to invade you, and I'll do a good deed and refine you into a corpse soldier as well, so that you can pair up with your old lover. Duan Zhengji laughed loudly. The outcome was set, and he was destined to rise up in the Thousand Corpse sect. Die! Guang Yuan suddenly exploded with power, punching out directly at Nong Qingyu's face. Under the terrifying impact, the corpse soldier was directly shattered into pieces. How terrifying was the power of someone half a step into the flower blossom tier. Duan Zhengji was startled. He had not thought that Guang Yuan would suddenly show his might. There was a sliver of his divine sense in the corpse soldier, which was why he could control it as he wished. Now that the corpse soldier was destroyed, his divine sense was also destroyed, instantly causing a backlash. Ah! He screamed, and even vomited a mouthful of blood. Guang Yuan, you are so ruthless, actually shattering Qing Yu's remains, he hurriedly called out again. Even the corpse soldier was destroyed, so how could he possibly be a match for Guang Yuan? He could only use words to attack and try his best to stall for time until the medicinal effects in Guang Yuan's body disappeared. You are the one who desecrated Qing Yu's remains. I only allowed her to rest in peace. Guang Yuan's expression was resolute, his gaze sharp. He had already made up his mind, and would no longer be moved by Duan Zhengji's words. He brandished his fists to attack, one punch after another, as if he could topple the mountains and overturn the seas. How could Duan Zhengji dare to receive his attacks head-on? He hurriedly turned and ran. As long as he could escape, he would immediately report the news that Ling Han possessed a spirit tool that could accommodate living beings. Although the merit would not be as great as if he had personally obtained it, it would still be a great merit. Do you think you can escape? Guang Yuan laughed coldly, and caught up with him in a big stride. Pang, his fist landed solidly on Duan Zhengji's back. Ah! Duan Zhengji screamed once again. He had already suffered a backlash from his soul, and his vitality was greatly injured. Now that he was hit by another punch, the shock was so great that his internal organs felt as if they were about to flip over, and it was extremely unbearable. This was also because he had cultivated corpse chi, and his body was already different from a normal person's. Otherwise, his body cavity would definitely be like a burst water sack, and blood would be gushing out incessantly. Guang Yuan gave chase again, and without hesitation, he raised his fists and struck out repeatedly. Pang, 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 5 consecutive punches landed, and Duan Zhengji was already beaten to death. Ah! He roared furiously towards the heavens. Although he had taken his revenge, he was still left with countless regrets. If he had been more forceful back then, and directly brought Nong Qingyu away, would today's tragedy have occurred? Ling Han walked to Guang Yuan's side, drew out a wineskin, and handed it over. What Guang Yuan needed the most now was probably to get drunk. This night, Guang Yuan was indeed very drunk, and was drawn into the Black Tower by Ling Han. He continued to advance, and at the next small town, he hired a carriage. This time, there was no one to rob him on the way, and the carriage carried him slowly towards Extreme Yang City. Xiao, not long after Ling Han left, a figure appeared beside Duan Zhengji's corpse. This was an old man who looked to be about 70 years old. He had a head full of white hair, and the skin on his face was so dry that it seemed to be stuck to his bones. However, his eyes were filled with a sharp aura, and if a normal person were to be looked at by him, they would probably be terrified out of their wits. Dead. He carefully examined Duan Zhengji's corpse, and mumbled, he was smashed to death by someone's fist. Judging from the strength of the fist, he should be in the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, or even half a step into the flower blossom tier. Could it be that the elites of the Winter Moon sect discovered Duan Zhengji's tracks, and pursued him all the way here, and a battle broke out here? I could only refine him into a corpse soldier. Since he's just died, perhaps I can extract some of his memories. The old man picked up Duan Zhengji's corpse, and his figure actually floated into the air. Flower Blossom Tear. This old man was Elder Nine Clouds of the Thousand Corpse sect. At first, he was going to see Breeze City to investigate and assign a new mission, but he never thought that before he arrived, he would receive news that the secret of the branch had been discovered by the Winter Moon sect, and could only retreat. He had yet to see Duan Jingji, and was told that Duan Jingji was pursuing the person who leaked the secret. In the end, he chased all the way here, but only found Duan Jingji's corpse. Only 5 days later, Duan Jingji's corpse was refined into a corpse soldier. If he had known about this when he was alive, who knew if he would regret joining this sect? It was truly deranged. Elder Nine Clouds continuously extracted Duan Jingji's memories. Although there were only bits and pieces, the last battle was still very complete. A spatial spirit tool that can store living things, ha ha ha, the heavens bless my thousand corpse sect, let's do it. He revealed a sinister expression, and immediately soared up. He wanted to find Ling Han, and seize that incredibly precious spirit tool. Chapter 374. After dealing with Duan Jingji, Ling Han obviously did not need to disguise himself anymore. He swayed along the way, and when Ling Han arrived at the extreme Yang city, his cultivation had already reached the middle stage of the third layer of the spiritual ocean tier. However, the bad news was that all his origin crystals had been completely spent, and he was now really penniless. Guang Yuan's cultivation also fell to the first layer of the spiritual ocean tier. After cultivating for more than a month, he had just stepped into the second layer, which was about the same as Can Yi. Even if these two people refined essence crystals day and night, they could only provide 2 pieces a month, and they were only 1 star. So sad. Ling Han sighed. When he entered the extreme Yang city, he handed over the last piece of origin crystal he had on him as the registration fee for entering the city. As long as he registered once, he would not have to pay any fees when he entered the city again in the future. To save money, he didn't even let Lu Yutong and the others come out. Now, the first step was not to find the 2 main ingredients for the spirit supplement pill, but to first earn money. If he didn't have money, did he have to steal or rob? That would require him to have the strength to do so. The extreme Yang city was the economic core of the entire North region. This place was extremely bustling, and 2 colossal entities sat there, the Alchemist Society and the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. The headquarters of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion was still called the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, but the place where the Alchemist Guild was located was called the North Pill Hall. It occupied close to 1/10 of the entire city, and a large number of martial artists and alchemists resided there. There was also a huge medicine field that provided alchemists' daily alchemy needs. It was said that this herb field was enveloped by a super-large spirit gathering array, causing the spiritual energy in the herb field to be incomparably dense and promoting the growth of the spirit herbs. In order to maintain the operation of this spirit gathering formation, an astonishing amount of origin crystals was consumed every day. Perhaps even the Winter Moon sect would feel a chill in their hearts when they saw this number. In terms of wealth and grandeur, there were 2 great forces in the North region, the Alchemist Society and the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. Only these 2 great forces could burn origin crystals like this. When Ling Han heard this, he couldn't help but feel an itch in his hands. He really wanted to enter the medicine field of the North Pill Palace, pull out a few stalks of every kind of spirit grass, and transplant them into the Black Tower to perfect his medicine field. In the Black Tower, that was a real medicinal field. Think too much. Make money, make money. Ling Han planned to open an alchemy shop and a restaurant to provide him with an endless supply of crystals. High-grade medicinal pills could indeed be sold for high grade through auctions, but the problem was that the rarer something was, the greater its value. If too many were taken out, the price would naturally fall. Furthermore, the amount of essence crystals that Ling Han required was an astronomical figure. No matter how much he had, it would never be too much. Therefore, not only did he need to take out some high-level medicinal pills from time to time to crazily collect origin crystals, he also had to make a steady stream of origin crystals and collect origin crystals unceasingly. All things were difficult at the beginning, and a single coin stumped a hero. Ling Han did not even have a single origin crystal, so he could only start from scratch. He first plucked some ginseng from the Black Tower, and ran to a pharmacy to sell it. As a result, the pharmacy tried its best to lower the price. He was so angry that he switched to another pharmacy, but the result was the same. He was an outsider, and his cultivation was only at the spiritual ocean tier, so of course he would take the opportunity to kill him. In the desolate north, the spiritual ocean tier was a cornerstone, but in the extreme Yang city, only spiritual pedestal tier warriors could be called elites, and flower blossom tier warriors could receive true respect. It couldn't be helped. Who asked the extreme Yang city to be the economic center of the North region? There were quite a few flower blossom tier elites here, and if it was only here, people would think that it was too easy to break through to the flower blossom tier. He switched to a few pharmacies, but the situation was about the same. Ling Han could only bear the pain and sell the ginseng cheaply. One had to know that they had been planted for almost 2 months, and the medicinal age of these ginseng was almost 300 years. You'll regret it. Ling Han noted it down. In the future, he would definitely open a branch next to every pharmacy and steal all their business. Ling Han could be very childish sometimes. With the starting capital, Ling Han immediately opened the pharmacy and restaurant. This was very simple. He could directly buy the ready-made ones, and there was no need to renovate them. Thus, 2 days later, his pharmacy and restaurant were already open for business. Lu Yutong was in charge of the restaurant, while Li Si-chan was in charge of the pharmacy. The restaurant was called Unforgettable, meaning that as long as one ate it once, they would never forget the taste, coming back again and again. The pharmacy was called Alchemist King Hall. With Ling Han's ability, this was not an exaggeration, he indeed had such ability. Since he wanted to earn money, then he naturally had to make a name for himself. But after opening for 2 days, the business of the 2 shops was not very good. In the restaurant, Ling Han took out some vegetables, fruits, and dried meat from the Black Tower. He had plenty anyway, but these ingredients were only used on some high-end dishes, and needed to be paid with origin crystals. However, when a new shop had just opened, the people who came to join in the fun were only some ordinary people. They ate ordinary food and wine, and paid with silver. High-end dishes could not be sold at all, so how could they earn origin crystals? It was the same for pharmacies. Though the name Alchemist King Hall was domineering, it was only a joke. Moreover, no one dared to eat alchemical pills indiscriminately. Before a good reputation was established, who would come to buy alchemical pills? It was impossible even if it was a little cheaper. Moreover, Ling Han did not want to fight for the market through a price war. The medicine of the Alchemy Emperor could be sold cheaply. Did he have to advertise his name as an Earth-grade alchemist? Ling Han shook his head. The Thousand Corpse sect's tentacles reached the desolate north and the Winter Moon sect, so it was hard to guarantee that there were no spies or branches of the Thousand Corpse sect here. Ling Han ruined the plans that the Thousand Corpse sect had plotted for many years in the Fallen Moon Gorge, so it was very easy for them to investigate him. If he advertised openly, then as long as the Thousand Corpse sect had spies here, they would definitely come to make trouble for him. It should be impossible for them to kill him, but they could cause trouble for his business, which was something he did not want. He changed his strategy and had the restaurant release a limited number of dishes every day, all made from vegetables grown in the Black Tower, for free tastings. Only 2 days later, the restaurant's business suddenly became shockingly hot. Word of mouth spread, and more people came here, among which there was no lack of powerful martial artists. And as long as they tasted those delicacies, they naturally could not forget them, and were willing to fork out large amounts of spirit crystals to spend. These delicacies were sold at a very high price. 1 dish cost 1 origin crystal, and those with meat were even more expensive, costing 10 origin crystals. Moreover, Ling Han had not yet released the meat of the demonic beasts raised in the Black Tower, so the price could be increased tenfold. However, demonic beasts were relatively rare, so Ling Han only planned to let his own people eat them, and did not plan to sell them. When the restaurant's business improved, Ling Han directed these customers to the pharmacy, and in this way, the pharmacy's business also improved. And although most of the alchemical pills in the pharmacy were concocted by Li Si-chan, the most valuable ones were concocted by Ling Han, and as long as they were used, everyone said they were good. In only 10 days' time, the two shops earned a steady stream of origin crystals for Ling Han, and the amount was extremely considerable. However, great wealth moved people's hearts. Ling Han had no backing, and was also a newcomer, yet he earned so much money, so how could he not attract jealousy? A young man came to the restaurant and asked for half of the profits. Chapter 375. A minute later, Ling Han switched to the second position. Ka, ka, ka. The bones in his body once again made explosive sounds, as if they were frying soybeans. Even though he had now cultivated body of iron sheet, and the hardness of his bones was comparable to rare metals of the same level, he still felt like they were about to break. Because he had forcibly assumed such a position, it was equivalent to him going against himself with all his strength. Not to mention rare metals that were comparable to the same level, even divine metals would similarly break. However, in this strange position, his flesh and bones seemed to each possess a life of their own, madly absorbing the accumulated energy and transforming it into his own power. However, it wasn't origin power, but rather the brute force of his physical body. His muscles obviously didn't bulge, but he still felt that every cell was filled with vitality, and with a slight burst, he could collapse a tall mountain. This was obviously an illusion. He had just started cultivating body arts, so how could there possibly be such a shocking effect? However, once he truly cultivated it and his physical body became divine, that punch would have the power of 9 true dragons, which was extremely terrifying. Ling Han switched to the third position. Ka, 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 his bones continued to make explosive sounds. He coughed up blood, but the blood was actually black, and there were some impurities inside, which made him involuntarily shocked. This effect was too obvious, wasn't it? His body was sweating like rain, and his hair was completely wet. Drops of sweat dripped down, and there was steam rising, forming waves of white steam. Hunyo found it interesting, and also imitated his position. Ouch, ouch, ouch. The little girl immediately complained incessantly, and hurriedly sat down on the ground. With a bitter expression, she said, "It's not fun, not good at all." Ling Han wanted to laugh. So it turned out that this little bewitching girl was not a freak of nature no matter where she was. 12 minutes later, he had done every position once, and a pool of sweat had already formed on his body. His whole body was completely drenched. He changed his position, and returned to the first position. Naturally, he had to do it for enough time. The energy essence inside his body was continuously being absorbed by his body. It was very strange. When he circulated the 5 elements heaven-grade skill, this energy essence turned into origin power, and was stored in his Dantian spiritual sea. Now, it was being absorbed by every cell in his body, and turned into pure brute force. Whether it was origin power or brute force, was there any difference? Ling Han had heard before that there were some beings that were born gigantic, and their adult bodies could even be the size of a city. They did not need to cultivate at all. With a punch or a kick, they would be able to collapse a tall mountain. It was like a human to an ant. From the ant's perspective, how high did it have to cultivate to be able to contend with the brute force of a human? Was the 9 dragons tyrant body art created by some gigantic beings that were born to be born? They specialized in the path of body cultivation, and used their physical bodies to become immortals. Ling Han suppressed the distracting thoughts in his mind, and focused on guiding the blood, flesh, tendons, and bones in his body to absorb the drifting energy, and turn it into his brute force. He had really eaten too much good food these few days, so the power that was transformed was also very frightening. It made him feel as if he was going to explode, and his whole body was swollen. After an hour, Ling Han stopped and sat down on the ground, panting heavily. This was really too tiring, but his whole body felt indescribably comfortable, forming a very strange feeling. After sitting for a while, he entered the Black Tower, took a bath, changed into a new set of clothes, and then tested out his brute force. It was comparable to element gathering tier. Heavens, he had only cultivated for an hour, and he had directly crossed over a whole tier of martial arts. Ling Han nodded. This was because he was standing at a different height. At this time, he was already in the spiritual pedestal tier, and had eaten so many great tonics. When these things were released, how could it still not be enough for a normal person to immediately cross over to the body refining tier? On the contrary, if you let a body refining tier martial artist eat so many tonics, he would have long been stuffed to death. However, the beginning was fast because I am already in the spiritual pedestal tier. My progress should not be so fast in the future, Ling Han said to himself. He cracked a smile. Body arts would be one of his trump cards. In future, who would think that he was at the end of his tether, but he would suddenly explode with a terrifying brute force, which would be able to turn the tables in a single move. He exited the Black Tower, and started a fire to cook with Hunyo. Now that he had an additional expense, his desire for food was becoming more and more intense. In future, the Black Tower will have to rear more demonic beasts, Ling Han said. Otherwise, it would really not be able to support his and Hunyo's stomachs. Hunyo expressed deep agreement, drooling as she stared at Ling Han. That egg can't be eaten, Ling Han said hurriedly. The little girl was still unwilling to give up, and had not forgotten the egg of the azure flame eagle. Stingy. Hunyo pouted, but when the food was cooked, she immediately began to eat happily. When they were about to finish eating, they saw someone climb up from below with great difficulty. It was Shinzhongcheng. He really did not think that the one who charged to the third place was not a flower blossom tier warrior of the older generation, nor was it the top of the young prodigy roll, but the white-robed sword king who had only charged to the 8th place this year. Ling Han nodded. These 3 stages actually did not test strength. Of course, if it was a monster like Ling Han and Hunyo, who obviously only had the cultivation of the 2nd or 3rd layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, but whose strength was comparable to the 9th layer, then that would be another matter. Overall, this stage was still a test of one's resilience. Spiritual pedestal tier cultivators had long since opened up their spiritual ocean, and their origin power was endless. Moreover, they had constructed a spiritual pedestal, which could almost reach the heavens. Climbing like this would definitely not exhaust one's strength. However, the gravity was too strong, and it was very easy for one to feel tired. Thus, who was fast and who was slow depended on each person's willpower. If you had to rest after every few steps, how could you possibly be fast? This swordsman's gaze was like a sword, flickering with an extraordinary splendor of tenacity and decisiveness. Obviously, he would definitely not stop until he reached the end. His body was like Ling Han's from before, covered in sweat, and his hair was completely drenched. However, when a man sprinkled sweat, not only did it not give others the feeling of being in a sorry state, it instead exuded an endless air of masculinity. Men should be like this. Ling Han dispelled the idea of inviting Shinzhongcheng over to rub him together. If Shinzhongcheng squeezed out all the tenacity in his body, it was very possible that he would win a great explosion. Either his cultivation level would soar, or he would obtain a great breakthrough on the path of the sword. Hunyo, we can't be lazy anymore. Let's charge to the top in one go, he said. Charge! Hunyo waved her small fist. The two of them also began to climb again. Their strength surpassed their cultivation level by too much, and in this place, the gravity that each person had to bear was determined by their cultivation level. Thus, the two of them were ridiculously fast, and in an instant, they had surpassed Shinzhongcheng. Yet Ling Han sighed. He was too relaxed, so relaxed that he could not squeeze out the limits of his body. Then, he would not be able to achieve the effects of tempering, what a pity. But on the other hand, that was also because he had long since raised his limits above this level, which was why he could be so relaxed now, having already passed through this process. When he thought of it that way, his heart felt better. Chapter 376. Ling Han leisurely walked downstairs, swept his eyes over the room full of black-robed men, smiled, and said, "It's lunchtime now. Everyone either start ordering or get lost. Don't affect my business. Fuck, can't I study the menu a little longer and think about what to eat?" Someone immediately slammed the table and shouted. "That's right, what kind of lousy restaurant is this? They don't even allow people to read the menu, forcing people to order. Is this a big restaurant bullying its customers?" Someone sneered. "We're not to be trifled with, so how do you want to bully us? Waiter, come here and read out the menu for me again. Read it clearly, don't speak so incoherently." A waiter trembled as he walked over. He was only a waiter and received a poor salary, so he really didn't want to get involved in this. However, a gushing spring tier elite was pointing at his nose, so how could a normal person like him dare not go over? He read out the menu. Louder, did you not eat? The black-robed man immediately shouted. The waiter could only raise his voice and read out the menu loudly. "How dare you, you actually dare to spit at me?" The black-clothed man glared at the waiter. Pa, a slap landed on the waiter's face, causing 3 of the waiter's teeth to fall out. The waiter was slapped so hard that his head was spinning. 3 waiters hurriedly walked up and supported him. They all looked at the black-robed man with angry expressions, but didn't dare to speak. "You can't bully people like this. What, you still dare to glare at me?" The black-robed man glared back at them, showing his ferocity. He, the other black-robed men laughed. To them, this was just a farce. Ling Han strode over, a leisurely smile still on his face, and arrived in front of the black-robed man. "You're the manager, so come and read out the menu for me." The black-robed man stared fiercely at Ling Han. The order they had received was to intimidate the people in this restaurant as much as possible. "Go to hell." Ling Han reached out and pressed down on his head, slamming it into the table. With a loud bang, the table made of yellow pear wood was immediately smashed into pieces. The black-clothed man immediately fell to the ground, clutching his head and groaning. Even if he was in gushing spring tear, being pressed down by Ling Han like that was still uncomfortable. He felt as if his head was about to explode. Schwa, at least 90% of the black-clothed men stood up, and there were only 7 spiritual ocean tier black-clothed men seated. They were still calm and composed, as if nothing had happened. "How dare you act so violently?" Those men in black all glared at Ling Han fiercely. "You call this acting fierce? Hey, hey, hey! You guys are really ignorant." Ling Han shook his head. Pa, he stomped his foot down, and the head of the black-clothed man on the ground immediately sank into the floor. He was in a kneeling position, and his buttocks were raised high, as if he was waiting for sex. Chong, 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 the standing black-clothed men all drew their weapons, all of them looking furious. Hunyo immediately bared her teeth at the people around her. The little girl was the real savage one, and her large eyes were already filled with killing intent. In her mind, there was no law, no reason, and no rules. Whoever treated her and Ling Han well was merely not an enemy, but whoever treated them badly was an enemy. Wild beasts treated their enemies with only slaughter. "Take him down, strip him naked and hang him at the door for everyone to admire," a black-clothed man called out. "That's a good idea. But we have to give him a beating first. He actually dared to injure our people. Go!" Immediately, 8 people brandished their weapons and slashed over. When Hunyo saw this, she instantly leapt down from Ling Han's body and attacked. Pang, 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 her weapons danced, and the 8 people were instantly knocked down, lying on the ground and groaning. This was naturally Hunyo showing mercy, because Ling Han shook his head at her, not allowing her to kill. Although the little girl was very unhappy, she would not disobey Ling Han's orders. Seeing Hunyo so ferocious, the 7 spiritual ocean tier martial artists could not sit still and all stood up. It was merely a newly opened restaurant, and the owner was an outsider who had just arrived, so what background or strength could he possibly have? Thus, for the 7 of them in the spiritual ocean tier to move out, it should have been a sure thing, but Hunyo's strangeness was something even they couldn't see through. "I'll do it." A black-clothed man in the spiritual ocean tier made a move, grabbing towards Hunyo. Invincible little tiger fist. Hunyo somersaulted in the air, her speed so fast that she was like a flash of light, already appearing behind the black-clothed man. Her small fist smashed, pang, instantly causing the man to stagger and spit out a mouthful of blood. Ling Han could not help but smile. Hunyo now had another attribute of being playful. Together, the remaining 6 spiritual ocean tier martial artists were all shocked, and hurriedly rushed forward. For a group brawl like this, people with some status and pride would definitely disdain, not to mention that the opponent was only a little girl. But these 6 people were all servants, so how could they have the bearing of an elite? If one person could not beat her, then they definitely had to attack together. Pride and whatnot, was that something edible? Hunyo was calm and unafraid. Her small figure darted left and right, swaying here and there. Her speed was so fast that even Ling Han, who did not open the Eye of Truth, couldn't capture her movements, not to mention these 6 people. In just a few moves, the 6 people were all defeated. Yeah! Hunyo jumped happily, looking like she was very powerful. The other black-clothed men all bared their teeth. It's over, they've kicked an iron plate. Before this, they thought that this restaurant was opened by a small martial artist in the Gushing Spring tier, and at most 1 or 2 spiritual ocean tier martial artists in charge. 7 of them came at once, so it should be enough to suppress them. Indeed, the other side only sent 2 spiritual ocean tier martial artists, but they were too fuck you fierce, torturing their 7 elites like dogs. What a fuck you. Run, go report to young Master Lang. Someone wanted to escape, but saw that Ling Han was smiling at them. I told you guys to leave just now, but you didn't. Now, it's too late. Ling Han moved, slapping one person over with a single slap. Instantly, all of them were lying on the ground. Those waiters were all dumbfounded, thinking that their boss was actually so fierce. Then as long as they made a name for themselves in this battle, they would definitely not dare to come and make trouble in the future. But they were also a little worried. The extreme Yang City was a place of crouching tigers and hidden dragons, and even spiritual ocean tier martial artists could only be considered small fries. Young Master Han, how should we deal with them? Zhu Wujiu asked. Tie them all up and hang them at the door, Ling Han said calmly. This will affect our business, Zhu Wujiu said hesitantly. A normal person would definitely avoid trouble, but would they still dare to enter after seeing such a scene? No matter, let them see our strength, Ling Han said. As an Earth-grade alchemist, what need was there for him to be afraid? He smiled faintly at the waiter who had been beaten previously, and said, Go to the cashier's counter and collect 10 silver coins. In future, your wages will be doubled. Thank you, sir. That waiter was instantly happy. 3 teeth could be exchanged for so many benefits, so it was worth it. Chapter 377. This time, there were a total of over 40 black-robed men. Every 10 people formed a skewer, hanging from the 3rd floor of the restaurant like grasshoppers. There were a total of 5 skewers, and the scene was quite spectacular. Many people were pointing and gossiping outside the restaurant. Some were bustling, some were making jokes, but those black-robed men naturally became the laughingstock. However, there were indeed many bustling people, but no one entered the restaurant to eat, because they all recognized the identity of these black-robed men. They were from the Lang clan, a spiritual pedestal tier force, so how could they let it go so easily? Thus, the Lang clan would definitely send people over later, and if they entered to eat, they would naturally be affected. They wouldn't starve to death even if they skipped a meal, right? But after a while, a young man in embroidered clothes strode over. When he saw the skewers of human meat hanging from the restaurant, he couldn't help but laugh loudly. He walked into the restaurant and said with a smile, "Interesting, really interesting, guest, how many are you?" A waiter immediately went up to greet him. "Just this young master alone." That young man found a seat and sat down, appearing very casual. It was a kind of soaring confidence. Obviously, he came from a wealthy family, or he himself was strong enough. This young master heard that the 8 great treasures here are very famous. "Give this young master a portion," he said. "All right." The waiter immediately turned and went to the kitchen. In a short while, the dishes were served. That young man only took a bite and his eyes widened, revealing an expression of disbelief. "It's delicious. It's delicious. It's delicious. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful," he praised. To be honest, this culinary skill is only average, but the ingredients themselves are too fresh and delicious. One bite makes one unable to stop, extremely wonderful. Hungry. Hunyo tugged on the corner of Ling Han's clothes. It was fine before, but when someone ate and drank to his heart's content in front of her, she instantly couldn't stand it anymore. Ling Han nodded, and had the kitchen prepare lunch for them. He, Hunyo, Lu Yutong, Zhu Wujiu, Ken Yi, and Guang Yuan sat at a table. When the good dishes were served, they immediately started eating. The food they ate was obviously not comparable to what they sold to others. They used not only the meat of demonic beasts, but also many precious medicinal ingredients, which were made into medicinal cuisine. These medicinal ingredients had been planted in the Black Tower for at least a month or two, so they were at least 100 years old. What kind of concept was that? It could be said that only in Ling Han's last life, he would have had so much wealth for him to squander like this, but he was only in the spiritual ocean tier now, and was also in the North region, a relatively barren land, so even a force like the Winter Moon sect couldn't do it. With delicious food in front of them, everyone began to fight over food without any regard for their image. Of course, none of them could possibly win against Hunyo. The little girl was born to be a foodie. Just as they were enjoying the food, they saw the young man in embroidered clothes walk over and say with a drooling face, "Can I sit down and eat with you? I won't eat for free. This meal is on me." Ling Han smiled and said, "Those 8 dishes aren't enough for you." The embroidered-clothed youth rubbed his nose and said, "It really isn't enough. Moreover, the dishes on your table seem to be even more delicious." His eyes were shining and he was about to drool. Indeed, with different ingredients, the fragrance wafting out would be different. Can't you see that all the waiters are desperately swallowing their saliva? Ling Han looked at the young man in embroidered clothes and found him interesting. He smiled and said, "If you still have an appetite, please sit." The young man in embroidered clothes was overjoyed and hurriedly sat down, pulling out a pair of chopsticks and eating. He finally came out. If he wanted to eat, he had to fight for it, no one would be polite with him. And, great. He ate a mouthful of meat, and his face instantly turned into a flower. This is a second-tier demonic beast, captivating fragrance deer, right? No, I've eaten many captivating fragrance deer, but the taste was definitely not this delicious. Moreover, there are many precious herbs inside, and eating one mouthful made all the pores on my body open up, and my cultivation increased slightly. He couldn't help but complain, and said, "Waiter, with such good stuff, why didn't you give it to me? Do you think I can't afford origin crystals?" Ling Han laughed and said, "These are not supplied to outsiders." The eyes of the young man in embroidered clothes immediately lit up, and he said, "You're the owner of this restaurant." "That's right." Ling Han nodded. "You provide me with these kinds of ingredients every day, and I'll let you name the price." The young man in embroidered clothes hurriedly said. Ling Han shook his head, and said, "I've already said that these are not supplied to outsiders, and are reserved for my own family." The eyes of the young man in embroidered clothes shifted, and he said, "I'm called Gong Letian, how should I address you, brother?" If these words were heard by the people in the circle of youths, they would definitely cry out in disbelief, because this guy's background was astonishing, and he had always been arrogant. Even in the extreme Yang city, There weren't many people that he took seriously, and now he actually called someone brother so warmly. It was truly inconceivable. But it also showed that this guy was really a glutton. Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "Ling Han. Brother Ling, from today onwards, you're my brother." Gong Letian was incomparably warm. "Since we're brothers, then those ingredients." He looked at Ling Han anxiously, like a puppy. "Humph." A cold snort was heard, and a young man walked in from the door. His face was dark and ugly, and he was extremely ugly. "How dare you treat this young master's subordinate like this?" It was Lang Junkai. Lu Yutong immediately stood up and said, "You're not welcome here, scram." What a joke, in the extreme Yang city, who has the right to tell this young master to scram? Lang Junkai sneered, and there was anger on his face. Something that was originally in the bag had actually encountered a setback. He was originally teasing a newly arrived pillar of the Tingyu Pavilion, as usual, when he suddenly heard a servant report that the people he had sent out in the morning had all been captured, and were being hung up as a public display. This made him so angry that he was seething with anger, and he could not care less that he had not eaten that alluring little thing, and immediately rushed over. "Tch, Lang Junkai, when did you become so impressive?" Gong Letian suddenly spoke. Previously, he still had the appearance of a pitiful puppy, but the moment he turned around, he carried an overbearing arrogance. "Does this young master also not have the right to tell you to scram?" "Gong, young master Gong." Lang Junkai instantly choked up, revealing a hint of panic. The Lang clan was considered a reputable clan in the extreme Yang city, but their true confidence came from the Earth-grade alchemist they attached themselves to. However, the Gong clan itself was an alchemy clan. Aside from Gong Letian, the rest of the 3 generations were all alchemists, and Gong Hikan of the older generation was even a low-level Earth-grade alchemist. Compared to the Gong clan, the Lang clan was obviously greatly inferior, and there was absolutely no comparison. For these spoilt young masters, what they competed on was obviously their clan's background. Even if Lang Junkai and Gong Letian both had the cultivation of the 5th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, Lang Junkai had no confidence to speak of in front of Gong Letian. "Don't affect this young master's mood to eat, scram," Gong Letian said domineeringly. "You're tuning into the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.